Imagine the entire world slowing down just for you, all because you have an extreme tolerance to drugs. Every substance you consume comes with different side effects. Your body enhances its physical and mental attributes. Any substance causes him to grow 100 times faster. In a world ruled by monsters, he once started absorbing monsters for what felt like only a few minutes. But when he came to his senses, 100 days had already passed. His body, strength, muscles, and intellect had completely changed. But before all of that happened, shouting to everyone, someone announces it's time to wrap up work. With the job done, the crew celebrates that they can finally go home. Then one of the guys opens a small bottle he had saved. Meanwhile, the other workers comment on how tough and exhausting the day was. Ignoring the conversation, he quickly drinks all the liquid from that little bottle. With a smile, he says goodbye to a co-worker, telling him he did a good job. Invited to dinner, he declines, saying he has commitments for the next day. His co-workers are impressed, questioning where all that energy comes from. Crossing the street, they continue speculating whether he takes some kind of vitamin. Feeling revitalized, the guy named Park Han-yul thinks about the effect of supplements. Remembering his time in the army, that's when a colleague offered him vitamins. He discovered that after a hard day, his fatigue would disappear completely. Back to the present, he runs toward the stop to catch the bus. Already inside the transport, he looks at his phone and thinks about buying a coffee. Suddenly, something catches his attention, leaving him with a confused expression. A young woman approaches him on the street, asking him to wait a moment. Curious, he wonders if she'll end up asking for his phone number. With a smile on his face, he turns and asks what she wants. She compliments him and invites him for a conversation, leaving him a bit confused. Then she introduces herself as a member of a cult, making him recoil immediately. Starting to run, he hears her ask him to wait and wish him a good day. Moving away quickly, he continues on his way without looking back. While running, he complains about scammers, saying he hates cults because of his father. Shifting to a flashback, the story shows that his father used to be a stable person. One day, he told his wife he would make an important decision about his life. After that, he quit his job and went to his parents' house in the countryside. There, he took various ingredients, being rushed to the hospital with stomach pains, until he went to the forest, leaving a letter saying he'd return with energy. All this happened when Han-yul was only 2 years old. Back to the present, he buys a drink, thinking about how much his father suffered. Coming out of the convenience store, he suddenly stops with a shocked expression. Looking at the sky, he sees a huge circle along with other people. That strange structure hovers in the air, making him question what that could be. Someone nearby comments they hadn't seen that before, thinking it's a movie. Taking his drink, he wonders if that could be a real spaceship. Suddenly, a very loud noise makes everything around him shake. With the ground trembling, people start to fall and scream desperately. Then, a monstrous hand breaks through the asphalt and bursts from the ground. A huge monster comes out of the hole, scaring everyone who was nearby. Standing in front of him, the giant creature holds some kind of club. The monster lets out a terrifying roar, and someone screams for everyone to run. Realizing the danger, he thinks he needs to flee that place immediately. Unexpectedly, a message about nutrient use appears in front of him. As the monster roars, another window informs him about the components of his drink. Seeing the creature raise its weapon, more messages about energy appear for him. A message warns that his senses and reflexes have been enhanced, making him dodge. Noticing the slowness of the attack, he's surprised by what just happened. Dodging once more, he wonders if he's seeing everything in slow motion. Still confused, he realizes the coffee he was holding spilled all over the ground. Looking at his hands, he questions if he always had a power like this. Seeing the spilled drink, he then speculates if the coffee caused everything. With this new perception, he believes he can escape that situation. But around him, people scream for help while being attacked by monsters. With a determined expression, he decides he needs to face those creatures. Taking a step forward, he feels that in this state he has a great chance. Advancing quickly, he lands a strong blow that throws the monster far away. The monster looks at him with great anger, preparing to attack again. Running toward each other, they prepare for the imminent confrontation. With the weapon falling, both he and the monster try to catch it in the air. Acting faster, he manages to grab the weapon's handle before the creature. With the club in hand, he raises it with all his strength to attack. Spinning his body, he lands a powerful blow that knocks the monster to the ground. Looking at the fallen enemy, he comments that he thought it would be stronger. Suddenly, his expression changes as he notices more danger approaching. Turning around, he sees a group of monsters running in his direction to attack. Gripping the weapon more firmly, he prepares for the new battle. With a defiant look, he says they can bring it on. Swinging the weapon, he prepares to hit the first monster in the group. His blow strikes the creature's face squarely, making it recoil from the impact. Taking advantage of the momentum, he continues the movement, hitting 2 others at once. With a series of blows, he manages to knock down several monsters that surrounded him. Even at a disadvantage, He keeps fighting against the creatures that won't stop coming. With a quick movement, he prepares to hit one more of the monsters. Turning with agility, he lands another precise blow on one of the creatures. After one last attack, the last of the enemies finally falls to the ground. Looking back, he sees the body of the monster he just defeated. Tired, he stands in the middle of the street, surrounded by all the fallen enemies. Catching his breath, he believes the long battle has finally come to an end. But suddenly, the ground begins to shake, and something strange appears in front of him. With an expression of pure despair, he realizes the situation has gotten much worse. A new monster, much larger than the others, appears and stares at him with hatred. The giant creature shows its teeth, letting out a roar that shakes the ground. Holding the weapon, he thinks maybe the enemy is weaker than it seems. At that moment, a frightening realization takes over his face. He sees the monster raising its gigantic weapon for a devastating blow. Frightened, he realizes the effects of the drink have just worn off completely. Inside the store, someone yells at a kid to close the blinds for safety. Afraid of the monsters, two men argue about who should go close the door. Pushing the other one of them says that task is the employee's job. At that moment, the impact of the blow shatters the store's glass, throwing everyone. With the force of the attack, one of the men falls to the ground screaming in pain. Looking at the destroyed entrance, he drags himself away from the imminent danger. Standing at the door, the giant monster stares at him with a threatening expression. Seeing the creature's shadow approaching, the guy on the ground begs for help. Extending its hand, the monster tries to grab the man who screams to be saved. Meanwhile, the guy lights a cigarette and a message about elixir appears. After dropping the lighter on the ground, he takes a determined step forward. Leaping into the air, he rushes forward to attack the monster and save the man. Descending with speed, he lands a devastating blow right on the creature's head. With the impact, the monster is thrown out of the convenience store. Approaching slowly, he moves toward the creature that's still on the ground. Taking a drag, a message about the cigarette's chemistry appears in front of him. New messages about energy and stimulation appear as he observes the fallen enemy. With a smile, he warns that round 2 is just getting started now. After tossing the cigarette away, he prepares to continue the long fight. Shouting that he's coming in, he charges full force toward the monster. Getting close, he lands a powerful blow directly on the creature's face. With incredible speed, he starts unleashing a sequence of strikes without stopping. Taking the attacks, the monster seems to have no chance to defend itself again. The creature glares at him with a furious expression, grinding its teeth in rage. Reacting to the attack, the creature finally manages to strike back. Dodging barely, he manages to escape the blow that passes grazing by him. Without wasting time, the monster raises its arm for a new massive attack. Seeing his enemy full of energy, the guy also prepares his counterattack. With a final blow, he hits the giant creature's face dead on. Being thrown backward, the monster falls hard in the middle of the street. Even fallen, the creature looks at him with an expression of pure fury. Shouting that the monster should taste this, he prepares a new attack. With a powerful stomp, he crushes the enemy's head against the asphalt. Tired, he looks at the defeated creature, finally catching his breath. Wiping his face, he comments that it seems cigarettes work too. Then, he wonders if his mom is okay, while the monster moves. Suddenly, the creature's hand lunges forward and grabs him with great force. The monster's grip immobilizes him, holding his face with no chance to escape. Surprised, he screams while being held firmly by the creature's hand. Throwing him violently, the monster hurls him to the other side. Fallen on the ground, he receives a devastating blow from the enraged creature. But to the monster's surprise, something interrupts its final attack. With his hand, he manages to grab the creature's fist, stopping the blow. Gathering his strength, he screams for the monster to stop its devastating attack. Screaming that it needs to die, the guy strikes back with a powerful blow. With the attack's impact, the giant creature shows an expression of pain. Losing its balance, the monster staggers backward, finally being overcome. Still standing, he faces the monster while trying to catch his breath a little. With his face bruised, he shows all the exhaustion accumulated from that fight. After pushing the monster away, he finally collapses on the ground with no strength left. Fallen on the asphalt, he says he's exhausted and can't move a finger. Suddenly, his eyes open upon hearing a strange sound coming from afar. Looking at the city, he sees more monsters attacking people who are screaming. Someone faces the creatures, cursing the monsters that continue the attack. Unable to get up, he says he has no energy left whatsoever. Shocked, he questions where so many monsters are coming from and the reason for the attack. With great anger, he screams for those creatures to stop all of that. Then, a voice asking for help catches his attention in the midst of all the chaos. chaos. Running desperate for his life, a man begs for help while a monster chases him. Being caught by the creature, he screams in panic, trying to escape from its claws. Fallen on the ground, the guy screams with all his strength for the monster to stop. Ignoring the warning, the creature lands a fatal blow, knocking the man to the ground. Suddenly, a mysterious figure appears in the sky. Descending slowly from the heavens, the long-haired person approaches the confrontation. Landing gently on the asphalt, their feet touch the ground cracked by the battle. Standing in the middle of the street, the figure faces the monsters with an imposing posture. Holding a paper talisman, the person prepares to initiate their attack. Advancing with incredible speed, the mysterious figure goes after the enemies. Launching the talisman, it flies toward the horde of monsters that awaited it. Floating in the air, the talisman becomes the center of a new attack. Multiplying rapidly, the papers form a sphere that surrounds all the enemies. Then the sphere explodes in a powerful blow, hitting all the creatures at the same time. Being struck, the monster is completely engulfed by that blow with no chance to escape. With the end of the attack, the mysterious figure stands still among the fallen monsters. Still on the ground, he comments that they managed to get all of them at once. Then, the person approaches him, as he wonders who she could be. With her hair now in a different tone, he says that was impressive. She then asks how he managed to kill one of those monsters without any training. Not understanding, the woman simply asks who the hell he is. Still on the ground, he keeps looking at her, not understanding who she is. Saying she needs to see his potential, she asks him to extend his hand. Confused by the request, the guy asks if she really wants his hand. Suddenly, his hand moves on its own, leaving him completely surprised by the situation. Holding his hand, she concentrates and says she's going to take a look. With a shocked expression, she questions what it is that she's sensing. Thinking about it, she notes that the energy is neither celestial nor human. She then concludes that he's an irregular, one chosen by destiny. Determined to eliminate him, she prepares a strike while he thanks her for the help. She continues preparing her strike, ready to stop this potential threat. Unaware of the danger, he says something bad would have happened without her. He keeps talking, saying he doesn't know how to express his immense gratitude. Hearing his thanks, she simply remains silent for a moment. In her hand, a type of blank card suddenly appears out of nowhere. She laments that his energy and his manners are such a great waste now. After speaking, she launches that small card in his direction. Flying toward him, the small card suddenly enters his open mouth. With no time to react, he ends up swallowing that strange object all at once. With a bitter taste, he asks what the hell she'd given him. Feeling something strange, he looks up with an expression of total confusion. She explains that it's a medicine used to seal the energy center. Continuing to speak, she says it's meant to seal demons out of control. Shocked, he hears her say that this is the only way to save his life. She warns that his irregular powers will one day ruin everything around him. Before turning away, she asks him not to hate her for this. Beginning to float, she says they'll meet again if destiny allows. Seeing her leave, he desperately shouts, asking her to wait a moment. Completely without strength, he finally collapses on the ground, unable to move anymore. Fallen on the asphalt, he questions why she gave him that medicine. Trying to understand, he wonders if it has to do with his special ability. With great frustration, he grits his teeth, feeling the effect of that seal. Struggling to get up, he says not to make him laugh at the situation. Dragging his feet, he says without his powers, he'd already be dead. Shifting to the convenience store, several pills are scattered across the floor, so he grabs a bottle he finds nearby on the destroyed ground. Drinking the liquid, a message about consuming the substance appears in front of him. Determined to survive, more windows about the drink's effects appear for him. Back in his room, he tests several different types of drinks. Spreading everything across the table, he begins to try each of the bottles. After taking a sip, he seems to have found an interesting effect. Sitting on the floor, he's surprised that hangover drinks also work. Feeling numb, he remembers she mentioned a disaster and that the seal worked. Thinking of his mother, he decides to grab his things and go to her house. Suddenly, a very loud alarm starts blaring, catching him by surprise. Looking at his phone, he wonders if this is a warning about more monsters. Reading the message more carefully, he's confused by what's written. The alert message warns about a disaster, suggesting everyone download an app. Holding his phone, he questions what type of app that would be. On the screen, the program's name appears as Special Measures 24. Finding the design bad, he believes it's not a scam since it's an alert. To continue, he scans his identity to authenticate access to the system. Shortly after, authentication is completed successfully on his phone screen. Suddenly, several strange symbols begin to float around his body. Startled, he wonders what those symbols are and what's happening. Then a notification appears, warning that his spiritual physique will be analyzed. Not understanding, he questions what that physique analysis really means. Then he remembers the woman, asking if this has to do with what she said. Remembering her warning, he worries about the return of some irregular. Trying to stop the process, he shouts for the analysis to end immediately. With a cry of pain, he feels a strong impact coursing through his entire body. Staggering backward, he groans in pain while losing his balance in the room. Fallen on the floor, he complains about the effect of that medicine right during the analysis. Seeing one of the drinks, he grabs it and starts drinking quickly. While he drinks, the notification in front of him continues loading non-stop. Feeling a bit better, he calms down, but a new alert appears. At this, he shouts, asking to wait, trying to stop the analysis from continuing. But it was too late, as the screen shows his analysis result. With the result displayed, he's left not understanding what happened there. On the screen, an explanation appears about the material called Azure Void. Known as Azure Void Energy, it's one of the best medicines in existence. Returning to the room, the analysis result finally appears before him. Completely confused by what he sees, he doesn't understand the analysis result. Feeling his stomach strange, a consumed drug notification pops up for him. The system then reveals that the chemical is Azure Void Energy. Since the drink cured the poison, only the effects of that energy remained. Suddenly, something strange happens, and his body begins to heat up. Sitting on the bedroom floor, he decides to wait for the fever to subside a bit. Even standing still, he continues feeling very uncomfortable with that sensation. Looking for a way, he wonders if there's a way to be more comfortable. After testing some positions, he finally finds one that seems perfect. He then sits on the floor, crossing his legs in a meditation position. Comparing the posture, he remembers old martial arts movies. Feeling very comfortable, he remains in that same position to rest. Grabbing his phone, he decides to stay there until the fever passes completely. Looking at the result, he questions why it says he has a mundane physique. The screen shows he has a physique filled with tree energy. Irritated, he remembers that she considered him an irregular and sealed him because of it. Confused, he wonders what the analysis means by tree energy. Placing his hand on his chest, he realizes the poison's effect has passed. He then thinks the ingredients may have changed during the analysis. Relieved, he concludes he would have been killed if the result had been different. Suddenly, a new screen opens before him with a live broadcast. A man in a suit begins making an announcement to all citizens. Surprised, he wonders why the president is giving a speech there. In his announcement, the president talks about the safety of the entire population. The story shifts, showing a chaotic scene of pure destruction. In that distant past, monsters dominated and ruled all the land. Back then, humans were hunted and discarded without any mercy. Amidst the chaos, some chosen ones received a special power they didn't have. This power gave them lives comparable to monsters and a new world. Later, these people were called saints, sacrificing their lives in the past. So that only humans could prosper, they became legends and myths. Continuing to protect the gates, they ensured humanity's development. Back in the present, the president says the saints will patrol their areas. To protect the people's safety, they were tested for their abilities. With the right to enforce the law, they can act as necessary. A process complete notification appears on the screen with a new option. Touching the screen, he wonders if this is what the system meant. Suddenly, several ability screens appear around him, leaving him surprised. Looking at all of them, he questions whether all that are really abilities. One of the screens shows a human body with 3 different core points. He reads that they're the upper, middle, and lower cores. Noticing the position, he wonders if they're the parts he felt heating up. The screen explains that with training, he'll feel heat in one of the 3 cores. When all 3 heat up, he can begin his training in the earthly paths. Sitting in lotus position, he questions if the system wants him to just breathe. He finds it funny that now he needs to practice a sacred breathing technique. So he concentrates and begins doing the breathing exercise slowly. With eyes closed, he breathes deeply, following the instructions on that floating screen. Surprised, he comments that all this is much easier than he imagined. He continues the breathing process, always following the screen's diagram. A message warns that feeling the heat can take months or even years. With enough training, he would reach a state of non-being, totally oblivious to his surroundings. He remains totally focused, taking the first step on his long journey. Finally, his path to becoming a saint had begun at that moment, but looking around, he's shocked by the plants growing throughout the room. With great force, the roots and branches even break through the room's wall. Looking at the cans, he asks what the hell all those plants are. Looking through the window, he wonders how long he stayed like that. Changing scenes, he complains that his phone is completely out of battery. He then searches for a clock to know what time it is at that moment. Walking a bit, he finally finds a digital clock on the wall. Looking at the display, he sees it's already June 22nd. Doing the math, he's completely shocked by the time that has passed. Screaming desperately, he realizes he spent 100 days meditating non-stop. Stepping on the floor, he feels the energy of the plants that grew in his room. With a towel around his neck, he celebrates that at least he still has water. He finds it strange that his wounds disappeared and that he doesn't feel hungry at all. Showing his arm, he notices he didn't lose weight and actually gained muscle. Meanwhile, he plugs his phone in to charge using a portable battery. With his phone charged, he decides to take a look at the recent news. Remembering the broken window, he thinks about what he saw outside. A massive dome-shaped barrier covered the entire area around him. With a strange noise, he turns to the window. Confused, a monster suddenly appears, breaking through the window and startling him. Taking a step back, he feels the tremor the creature causes. With his face in panic, he wonders what kind of monster that is. Looking closer, he sees a terrifying scene outside. Through the window, he sees several different monsters walking through the city streets. Shocked, he realizes there are monsters everywhere around him. Grasping the situation, he thinks he needs to get out of this place as fast as possible. Looking at his phone, he complains there's no network signal because of the barrier. Without many choices, he decides to open the emergency app he downloaded. He realizes he survived the 100 days thanks to that breathing technique. On the screen, a welcome message appears with his name on the app, but a warning informs him that some functions need an internet connection. Curious, he wonders if there's anything else he can access. Searching through the screens, he finds a window with all his information. Reading the screen, he questions what those charm copies would be. Touching another screen, he wonders if that can also be opened. The window informs him there are 3 charms he can use at the moment. The first one is a 9th level spatial magic called Light Steps. Finding it all very simple, he tries to use the ability, but something goes wrong. With a frustrated expression, he grumbles at not being able to use the power. Looking at the screens, he wonders if this is all he can do. Looking around, he comments that he doesn't feel any change in his body. Taking a step, he plants his foot on the ground, still confused about what happened. Suddenly, he quickly lunges forward into a wall at full force, not understanding how he did it. Kneeling on the ground, he wonders if the spatial magic was real. Still confused, he decides to check what the other abilities he has are. One of them is a card to increase strength and carrying capacity, and the other is a type of rope that serves to blind enemies. Thinking about using the power, he wonders if he should test it on the roof. He worries that the monsters might see the light and come to him. Sitting on the floor, he becomes thoughtful about what he should do next. He remembers he copied the breathing technique and decides to take a look. Reading the screen, he discovers he can level up with experience. Shocked, he calculates he would need at least 10 years per star. Discouraged, he wonders if he'll have to breathe his whole life until he dies. Determined, he says he'll see how many stars he has first to know. Concentrating energy in his hands, he prepares to measure his level. Extending his left hand, he focuses all the energy he can gather. The system warns that the number of rings on his hand is his level. Suddenly, a loud noise startles him, interrupting his concentration in the room. With an irritated expression, he wonders what that strange sound was. Looking at the wall, he sees a monster manage to invade the place. The creature approaches, showing its teeth and growling with great rage. He then realizes he needs to find something to defend himself very quickly. With a smile, he seems to find exactly what he was looking for. The monster leaps to attack, destroying the room's wall with the impact. Turning his face, he prepares for the imminent strike from that creature. Lunging forward with everything, the monster attacks him, sinking its teeth into his arm. Screaming in pain, he feels the creature's bite pierce his skin. While being attacked, he remembers an ancient absorption technique. This ancient ability allowed stealing all the vitality from a beast. Using his hand, he chooses an ability similar to the one he remembered. With the art of enchantment, he uses the power to plant sprouts on the creature. He then lands a blow that throws the monster hard to the ground. With the impact, the creature is hurled, breaking the room's floor. Still fallen, the monster seems to have been completely defeated by his power. With his body glowing, he absorbs the energy from the creature on the ground. Looking at the wound, he says he survived because he found a useful ability. Suddenly, he feels something strange, as if a new energy emerged. His body absorbs the creature's nutrients, like iron and also protein. At this, messages about his blood and energy appear while he kneels. With the energy absorbed, the creature's body begins to disintegrate. Gasping for breath, he feels the power he just gained from that monster. Looking at his hand, he questions what's happening to his entire body. He feels an enormous amount of energy flowing through him, leaving him surprised. Sitting on the bed, he wonders if this is because of the monster's vital energy. Standing up, he says this is great and that it'll be enough for now. Ready to leave, he notices something strange on the defeated creature's body. Approaching it, he wonders what those sprouts growing there are. He's certain those small plants weren't there before the fight. Deciding to take them, he believes they might be useful in the future. Walking down the corridor, he thinks he can only use the ability once. He concludes he needs to absorb the energy before finishing off the monsters. Thinking about his situation, he decides he needs to hold out until the rescue arrives. Then he prepares to use one of his light abilities. Turning the corner, he comes face to face with a new monster in his path. With its body ready, the monster prepares to attack with everything it has. Letting out a roar, the creature charges toward him with great speed. He's attacked by the creature, which bites down hard on his arm. Confused, the monster realizes something strange is happening to it. Using his enchantment art, he creates layers of energy around his body. Screaming for the monster to let him go, he prepares a powerful counterattack. With a precise strike, he hits the creature's jaw, and it releases him. With no time to relax, he runs away from the monster that was knocked down. Running, he thinks he needs to get upstairs fast to call for help with the flare. Climbing the stairs, he's pursued by the creature that won't give up the attack. Complaining that the monsters are endless, he prepares for another confrontation. He then lands a blow that throws the creature against the corridor wall, but immediately after, he receives a strong hit that throws him backward. Fallen on the ground, he receives a sequence of blows from the creature without stopping. Looking back, he sees that another monster managed to reach the stairs. Running, he wonders how many monsters still exist in that building to face. Reaching the rooftop, he prepares to finally use his flare. Suddenly, a strike hits the rooftop, opening a crater and raising dust. Coughing hard, he manages to escape the smoke, recovering from the impact. He then turns around and is shocked by what he sees right in front of him. On the rooftop, an enormous monster emerges, breaking the ground with its appearance. The giant creature shows its teeth and its multiple eyes to Hanyul. Feeling like he's going to lose his mind, he finds himself surrounded by monsters on all sides. With a determined look, he realizes this is his all-or-nothing chance. Taking a step forward, he prepares to use his light ability. Running toward the monster, he prepares for the final attack. Holding his phone, he activates the power of the card he chose. The agitating light ability is activated, creating a massive energy explosion. With the intense brightness, all the monsters are blinded by the light of his power. With its eyes closed, the giant monster feels the pain of the strong light. The other creatures also scream, affected by the ability he used. The intense light rises to the skies, illuminating the entire rooftop of the building. Hidden, he hears a voice calling him, asking where he is. He then realizes it's a human voice and that the rescue team has arrived. Running to the rooftop, he shouts that he's there and waves to the man. Landing in front of him, an older-looking man appears in the air. He questions why he's just standing there and if he doesn't have a talisman. Embarrassed, he replies that he only had the 3 he received at the beginning. Finding it all a nuisance, the man tells him to extend his hand in his direction. He then scolds a monster, asking what it's doing just standing there. Suddenly, he screams desperately, warning that the monster is behind him. Turning around, the man faces the creature and calls it a great plague. With his hand, he creates a circle of energy spheres around his arm. Launching his power, he attacks the monster that was coming in his direction. With the monster defeated, the two stand still in the middle of the destroyed rooftop. Irritated, the man tells him not to make him repeat himself and to extend his hand. Scared, Hanyul just stares at the man, not understanding what to do. With a circle of fire, the man levitates him and pulls him close. He questions why he was walking through a restricted area of the city. Flying away from there, the man says he doesn't need to know the answer. Grateful for being saved, he accompanies the man through the city skies. Being carried through the air, the two fly through the protective barrier. With the shock, he screams and almost drops his phone on the ground. Looking at the device, he says he's receiving many notifications at once. Flying over the city, he's relieved to know that his mother and relatives are okay. With a serious look, he wonders how different other places are. Hanging up the phone, he says he'll call his mother again later. He explains it was nothing, just an investigation because he went missing. With a smile, he says he'll visit her later when everything is over. The officer asks if he's finished the call, and he confirms yes. Thanking him, he says he's happy that his relatives and his mother are safe. Suddenly, the room door opens and a large man enters. The man approaches and asks the officer if that's the boy. The officer introduces him as one of the disciples under Cha Hyun-jun's command. With an authoritative tone, the man orders the officer to leave the room immediately. Irritated, he yells at the officer to get out and not make him repeat the order. He then asks if Hanyul learned ascendance before the gate opened. With a furious expression, he questions whether he's worthy of waking his master. With a serious look, Hanyul just stares at the man man without saying a word. Showing the screen, he asks if Hanyul can see what's written. Pointing at the screen, he shows that his level is that of an ascendant. A list shows there are 9 levels, with the highest being terrestrial. He explains he was recognized for his qualifications and accepted as an ascendant. Irritated, he says age and ethnicity don't matter, only experience. Hanyul concludes that ascendant is the lowest level and asks about the master. Shouting, the man grabs him by the shirt, telling him to get a clue right now. He warns him that if he was born with a spiritual physique, he must obey. With a furious look, he says there won't be a second chance for him. With a smile, Hanyul says he heard no one can change masters. Enraged, the man calls him a punk, ready to strike him. Suddenly something catches his attention, and he pulls back with a shocked expression. On Hanyul's information screen, the performance level changed to high. Remembering the list, the man says that's the next level after ascendant. Shocked, he doesn't understand how that's possible and questions him. Tapping his chest, Hanyul says he needs to do his best. With a confident smile, he asks if he's right about that. Scene change. An older-looking man is sitting in a room. He questions his disciple, asking if he treated Hanyul like a veteran. Afraid, the man bows as the master asks about the technique. Yelling that he's an idiot, the master slams the table hard. He asks if the disciple really passed the bandit's technique to Hanyul. Stuttering, the man explains his performance level was higher. The master then concludes it might be because of his body constitution. He reprimands his disciple, asking if he'll keep talking nonsense. The master explains he was born with a mundane physique like both of them. The disciple asks if that means his training speed is faster. He explains that humans come from water and return to earth. Using fire to ward off the cold, they melt iron to refine it. With incompatible relations, Hanyul's nature is more aligned with wood. He then says the report is to help him, since he's a rare case. Thanking him, the disciple bows to his master, ending the conversation there. Finding it fascinating, the master thinks about Hanyul's physique nature. He wonders if the stellar wind exists only for the wood nature. Scene change, Hanyul is sitting in front of his computer researching. Typing rapidly, he searches for information about spiritual physiques. Sitting at his desk, he carefully reads his search results. According to the government, there's no one with an irregular physique in the country. The news says the few people with this physique were all isolated. He remembers seeing people receiving notifications from the app. With a serious look, he realizes he wasn't captured and that he's an irregular. The spiritual physique is divided into 3 types, being mundane and celestial. But a 4th type, the irregular physique, can appear unpredictably. To stop the monsters, the saints fought them and banished them from the world. Over time, their existence was left only in tales and legends. Irritated, he crosses his arms. Remembering examples like Hong Gildong and John Wuchi, he thinks it doesn't make sense to be excluded for not being a killer. Taking a sip of tea, a message about the beverage's chemicals appears. He then thinks even tea can be incredible for someone with his ability. Sitting on the floor, he concludes he got that result because of the azure void. Thoughtful, he says there's no reliable information about effects similar to his. Stretching in his chair, he supposes there are limits to public information. With a serious look, he seems to have a new idea for his research. Going back to the computer, he starts typing rapidly on the keyboard. In the search field, he decides to look for information about illegal drugs. An anonymous post talks about seeds his grandfather had in a book. Reading the post, he's confused seeing the image of those seeds. He remembers having picked up similar sprouts from the monster's body he defeated. Surprised, he wonders if those seeds are the same ones he picked up. Holding the seeds in his hand, he analyzes them with great attention. Remembering the battle, he says he took the seeds from the beast in the apartment. Then he turns to the computer, thinking about researching them. Searching the internet, he notices there are no images of the seed already germinated. Then an anonymous post appears, seeming to be the answer he was looking for. It says that purgatory grass is difficult and slow to germinate. Reacting to the information, he questions the difficulty of making them sprout. Then he realizes that the seeds in his possession are already sprouting. Remembering a fight, he tells himself that it can't be. Then he says he's going to experiment with the seeds that haven't sprouted yet. Holding the seeds, he states that he'll use a special breathing technique. Sitting down to meditate, he begins to execute the breathing technique slowly. With his eyes closed, he remains motionless throughout the entire process. When he opens his eyes, they seem to have changed after using his ability. Looking at his hand, he reacts surprised at what his technique did. Observing his hand, he's impressed to see that the seeds have finally germinated. Changing scenes, a blonde man barges into the room yelling for someone. Looking around the room, he wonders where the other guy went. He then questions if Hanyul ran away, but says he wouldn't leave the area. Searching the place, he wonders if something was stolen by chance. Then he opens the fridge, looking inside to see if he finds anything. Seeing some peaches, he yells, saying he knew the other guy was a thief. In another place, the scene shifts to a park, right in the middle of the city. There he buries one of the seeds in the ground, preparing to begin. Sitting in the park, he begins to meditate using his ability on the seed. After a while, his eyes open slowly as he finishes the process. He's then surprised to see the small tree that grew in front of him. Facing the tree, he says it grew a lot in just 2 hours. Touching the plant, he tells himself that this is simply incredible. With a smile, he confirms that his technique has the power to cultivate plants. Saying he won't have problems, he decides to test the plant's sprout. Then he eats the sprout of the purgatory grass that he just cultivated. Sitting down to meditate again, a new energy begins to emerge from his body. With his eyes closed, he says the heat is starting to spread. Questioning what would happen if he absorbed it, the energy suddenly disappears. Asking if he did something wrong, he says he'll try the process again. But the energy disappears again, leaving him completely confused with the situation. Analyzing the sprout, he notices that part of the energy stayed in his abdomen. He then wonders if it's because the azure void is of better quality. Even without understanding, he says he'll try to absorb the energy one more time. Suddenly, while concentrating, his eyes begin to shine intensely. Then the energy reappears, but he says its heat is now different. Sitting in front of the computer, he tries to remember what the post said. Remembering the research, he says the grass has the nature of yin. Thinking about the matter, he says his technique absorbs the tree's energy. Questioning about the seeds, he wonders if he needs to absorb the yin energy. He then says his life is in danger if he encounters mixed energies. Leaning on his knees, he says it's a relief the efficiency has improved. Then he turns to the tree, saying he also needs to take care of it. Approaching slowly, he grabs the base of the small tree's trunk. Pulling the plant from the ground, he comments about the solar wind's rules. At that moment, he gets startled by his phone ringing, and he questions what the alarm is about. On the screen, a message warns about a level 2 calamity alert. Running with the tree, he gets irritated that they're only announcing the alert now. With the rain falling, a person yells for everyone to go to the shelter. Arriving at the entrance, he finds the path blocked by a group of men. Then a guy screams, scared, seeing a giant worm coming out of the ground. Looking at the creatures, he tells them not to be afraid because they're from the earth. He warns that it might be less dangerous if nobody touches the worms. He says if everyone stays there, the creatures won't approach. Suddenly, he hears someone desperately screaming for help. Then he sees that the scream comes from a pot full of worms. Then a strange creature appears, showing its teeth and its long tongue. Then a giant monster appears at the location, scaring everyone who was there. With a smile on its face, the creature stares at the group of people there. Shocked by the situation, he's paralyzed, staring at the monster in front of him. Facing the group, the monster flashes a terrifying smile at them. Fallen on the ground with her dog, the woman desperately begs for help. Seeing the scene, he's completely paralyzed and shocked by the situation. Being grabbed by the creature, the woman keeps screaming for help there on the ground. The monster then throws the woman upward, hurling her with tremendous force. Falling into the pot, the woman lands among several worms. Surrounded by the worms, the woman is completely terrified by what's happening. From above, the monster just watches the entire scene unfolding down below. Frightened, one of the men says that almost happened to him too. Then the other man asks if he's also smelling cigarette smoke. Standing there, he appears smoking a cigarette while holding the tree in his hand. Saying it can't be, he faces the creature with one of his eyes turning red. Throwing the cigarette on the ground, he says they won't let a person die. Shouting that this doesn't make sense, he advances toward the monster. Holding the tree as a weapon, he prepares to attack the creature. He then delivers a powerful strike right to the giant creature's head. With the blow, the monster recoils, screaming in pain from the attack it received. Confused by the situation, he wonders if he was already this strong before. He then questions if the reason was the grass he ate earlier. Turning his face, he just tells himself it wasn't that. Then he realizes the rain is the Dragon King's tears. A message then appears, saying a substance was consumed by him. In it is written that the chemical is the Dragon King's tears. It's explained that the water makes trees grow much faster. The message also says the rain makes the trees even stronger. Activating and amplifying the energy of the wood element, the effect happens. Holding the tree, he says he now feels capable of doing anything. Using the power of the rain, he begins refining the tree into an artifact. Next, the tree contorts, changing shape right in his hand. It then becomes an exorcist blade, a weapon made to kill demons. Wielding his new weapon, he prepares to finally face the great creature. Seeing that, the monster becomes furious and roars loudly in his direction. Then the creature flies upward, initiating a fast and very direct attack. Gathering energy in its hands, the monster prepares a powerful strike against him. Trying to defend himself with the weapon, he shouts, asking for some help. With difficulty, he manages to hold back the strong blow that came from the monster. He resists with great force, trying not to yield to the great enemy's attack. Being pushed back, he says he'll be thrown out if he loosens his grip. Fighting to endure, he shouts that he needs to withstand the attack no matter what. The creature doesn't stop the attack, continuing to push him with all its strength, but seeing an opening, his eye glows in a very different way. Taking advantage of the opportunity, he lands a precise strike on the monster's face. He attacks the creature with his blade, delivering a very powerful blow. Realizing the attack didn't even leave a scratch, he's surprised. He then wonders if this has to do with the exorcist blade. Confused by the situation, he faces the creature that also seems not to understand. Noticing the monster is staring at the blade, he remembers an old saying. The creature then looks away, ignoring him and focusing on something else. Fallen on the ground, the woman desperately tries to crawl away from danger. Looking back, she reacts with great fear upon seeing the creature approaching. He turns quickly, asking where the monster is going now. The monster advances at high speed, flying straight toward the woman and grabbing her. Hanyul strikes the monster, making it stunned and drop the woman. Sliding across the ground, he manages to grab the woman before anything happens. She thanks him, but he warns that it's still too early to relax. The creature roars again, seeming to be very angry about the situation. Running with the woman in his arms, he flees from the creature pursuing him. Then the monster advances, preparing to strike with its claws. Holding the woman tightly, he receives a surprise attack. With the blow, he jumps back while throwing the woman at the barrier. Fallen on the ground, he sees the wall completely cracked from the attack's impact. With his face injured, he feels the effects of the blow he received. Leaning on the weapon, he says it was a relief to have escaped without fractures. Catching his breath, he prepares for the monster's next move. Flying in his direction, the creature prepares to attack once more. With an angry face, the creature stares at him up close with its teeth showing. Looking up, he says that flying at that size is cheating. He says he can't run away because the drug's effect is wearing off. Thinking about planting sprouts, he finds it difficult to use that against a flying enemy. Since it's a gamble, he decides he's going to use his secret technique. The exorcist blade has roots in the ground, growing and exchanging energy over time. With the rain of tears, he realizes he can speed up the entire process. Using a technique, he absorbs the rain to increase the weapon's strength. Confident in the result, he says he can execute his plan without problems. Holding the energized blade, he prepares to use his powerful ability. With his eyes closed, he begins the execution of solar winds to attack. Then he uses the art of enchantment, activating his lightning strike. Facing that energy, the creature prepares for the attack it's about to receive. With a step forward, he advances rapidly toward the large creature. He then leaps toward the monster, which stares at him with its mouth open. Spinning in the air, he lands a powerful blow right on the monster's body. With another strike, he causes massive damage to the creature's side. Feeling the damage, the creature reacts with a very loud cry of pain. With a cut on its eye, the creature glares at him with intense rage. Spinning in the air, he prepares another strike against the large creature. With a determined face, he charges upward with all his strength. With the blow, the creature's face begins to crack entirely. Then the defeated creature begins to disappear right in front of everyone. From afar, a couple observes the scene, pointing in his direction. Shocked, they film everything, and the man says he killed the creature. He then says the creature is the pet of a powerful deity. But even so, he saved the person in danger without even hesitating. Looking at him, the man describes him as a true superhero. Changing the scene, a camera records him standing in the street after the fight. In another recording, a different person launches a very powerful strike. Then the strike hits the target, causing massive destruction at the location. Screaming in the recording, a man calls the other a punk with great anger. In the video, he asks Hanyul if he has any idea what he's done. He shouts, saying that Hanyul killed the bird that Lady Yuhua loved so much. After the attack, the man orders that Hanyul be dragged away immediately. The recording shows Hanyul on the ground, quite injured after the confrontation. Lying in his bed, a man watches the entire recording on his phone. In her room, a girl also watches the video that spread across the internet. Inside a bus, several people watch the viral video on their phones. In the online comments, people begin to debate about what happened on the street. Other people ask what he did wrong to deserve that. More comments appear with people saying they felt relieved by the death. People agree that it's better for a bird to die than a person. Changing the scene, a woman asks another if her child is dead. Lady Yuhua wants to know if the Taoist burned whoever killed her messenger. The other responds that, for now, they only subdued and detained him. Saying they despise her, she complains about only keeping the punk in custody. Screaming at her servant, she orders that the humans make an example of him. But the servant says that a recording of Hanyul has become a popular topic. She then advises her lady to be kind, because of the general dissatisfaction. With a smile, she says the world has no charm and the rulers are afraid. Asking about a way to calm her anger, she hears about a tribute. With a satisfied expression, she says she'll eagerly await this tribute. Noticing that the rain stops, the servant says the king's sadness has ended. She then says the king was satisfied with the rain ritual. Holding an object, she says the important thing is having gotten that in her hands. Her servant then bows, handing her a very special object. Looking at the item, she confirms it's exactly what she was expecting. The fruit is a treasure that blooms every 1,000 years and bears fruit in 3,000. Coming from the tree of immortality peaches, it grows in a mystical orchard. She says the orchard vanished when the queen mother sacrificed herself for everyone, saying she'll make the shell sprout. She states her name will replace the queen's. Changing the scene, walking down the street, Hanyul walks alone after everything that happened. With a tired expression, he continues his path amid the city crowd. Remembering the conversation, a man accuses him of making the deities look bad. Another man warns him not to stand out because they're the ones who judge everything. Leaving, he thinks he didn't do anything wrong and just wanted to help. With a smile, he says that although he lost his sword, he managed to grab this. Returning to the fight scene, he stands still staring at the defeated monster. Looking at the creature's body, he notices a strange detail down there. Then he crouches down, picking up an object that was on the monster's ankle. Holding the item, he wonders what that wooden block is. Then he questions why the object was tied to the creature that way. Suddenly, he notices something, wondering if that piece of wood is alive. Then energy begins to emerge from the object, completely enveloping his hands. Holding the wooden block, he analyzes the object with great attention. Looking at the sprout, he says he used his technique to make it grow. Then with a confident smile, he wonders if he should try to cultivate it. A year has passed, and the city seems to be following its routine normally. On television, an anchor reports the general complaint about a bad smell. Meanwhile, at a bar, the government announces they'll purify the river water. There, a customer complains a lot, saying the place has a horrible smell. Then the bar owner shouts, saying the problem is the river monster. Going back a month, a monster hid itself inside the Han River. In the darkness of the water, its red eyes shine in a very sinister way. Emerging from the river, the 1,000-year-old fish serpent finally reveals itself to all. Becoming a god, it proclaims itself the Lord of the Han River to everyone. Seeing the news on his phone, a man reacts with disdain to the situation. In a meeting, Yang Giju says that Fish Serpent is very petty. Then another man asks him to avoid comments unrelated to the meeting. Then a woman approaches, continuing what the other man was saying. She's Shin Samin, and she tells him to sit more appropriately. Ignoring what she says, he curses the meeting and she yells at him. With a smile, he asks if he's wrong about them solving the problem alone. Irritated by his attitude, she questions whether he really thinks that's right. A man says everything is based on the will of the elders present there. With an irritated face, she clenches her teeth with great force and anger. She then confronts him, asking if it was his master who taught him that. Remembering her master, she says thousands of citizens are already sick. She shouts that her master said they need to find a solution quickly. Pointing at him, she accuses him of having insulted her master with his words. With an ironic smile, he asks her if she can kill the sovereign. With nothing to answer, she just stares at him with a worried expression. He then tells her that yesterday, 4 mystic immortals already had an accident. Looking around the room, he asks if they really want to enter the fish's mouth. Even with the arguments, she continues staring at him with a serious expression. The difficulty in dealing with the monster is that it uses earth and water techniques. The only way to win would be with an immortal with a higher rank. Saying he's out, he says this is like worrying about a job. With a face full of rage, she breaks her phone with her own hands. Turning his back to her, he warns that he's leaving to go train. Alone in the room, she says defeating the fish serpent is the quickest solution. Walking through the forest, she proceeds alone amid all the vegetation. Stopping her walk, she grabs a case that was on her back. Opening the case carefully, she reveals the weapon that was stored inside. Remembering a year ago, she recalls that a man killed Lady Yuhua's bird. He was arrested and released, but his wooden sword was confiscated. The wooden sword was rare and caused a very big disturbance. Remembering Park Hanyul, she says that if it's him, it might work. He didn't leave Gwanak-gu and worked at a restaurant for a year. She says he doesn't use the app, so he can't use talismans. Remembering the recordings of the fight, she says it's not impossible that it's him. Suddenly, a man in a hoodie running passes by her in the forest. Running along the trail, she identifies him as Park Hanyul. He turns suddenly and she reacts surprised, trying to reach him. Saying he turned suddenly, she states that she can't lose him. Using a special technique, she prepares to run much faster. With her pursuit technique, she advances at high speed through the forest. drift. Running along the path, the chase continues at high speed between the two. Even with the speed, she complains that the pursuit is getting difficult. She then realizes that she can't in any way reach him. Running with a talisman, she laments not being able to close the distance between them. Hiding among the trees, he disappears from her sight for a moment. Arriving at a clearing, she wonders where he could have gone. Stopping her run, she finally tells herself that she lost him. Appearing behind her, he asks if she belongs to the Immortal Society. Taking off his hood, he says he didn't flee, but that he was surprised. Looking at his face, she notices that he's sweating quite a bit. Realizing he didn't use a talisman, she questions herself about his physical strength. Then he hands her a phone, asking her to take the device. Touching the device to her phone, he seems to initiate some kind of verification. Appearing on the screen, a message warns that the device's user has been changed. With an apprehensive expression, she closely observes what he's doing. He holds the phone firmly, waiting for the login process to finally finish. He asks if by showing this, everything will finally be resolved between them. Shocked by what she sees on the screen, she says she can't believe it. Showing his information, the profile reveals that he's a high-class immortal. She then becomes surprised to see that he's an immortal superior to her. Walking together, they start talking about the mission ahead. He asks if she wanted to use her element to kill the river sovereign. With a serious expression, he questions whether the immortals really want the monster dead. Hearing his question, she finds herself with no answer to give at the moment. He then says that, in his opinion, this is all intentional negligence. She shouts that the seniors didn't act, leaving the rookies to solve everything on their own. Mocking the situation, he says thousands suffer for the growth of the rookies. Changing the subject, he asks if his sanctions will be lifted if he cooperates. He also asks if he can finally have his old sword back. Surprised by the question, she asks how he knew she had the sword. Grabbing the case, he says his technique allows him to interact with the trees. She then wonders if that's why he can run so fast. He says he first wants to know if his curfew can be removed. Looking at her phone, she informs him that permission for release has already been granted. With a smile, she says no one will complain since he only helped. She thinks the curfew was created to punish Park Han-yul. With the sword in hand, she decides she'll do everything to convince him. At the river's edge, red water with smoke fills the place. One of the men there asks if they really needed to go there. Another man complains about her presence, saying it's a nuisance having her there. Asking for calm, she says all of this is for the sovereign's slaughter. Watching Han-yul from afar, she wonders what he'll do. With his back to the river, he prepares for what's to come. Disgusted by the situation, he opens his fanny pack to grab an item from there. Showing the soil he grabbed, he says he didn't expect to use it so soon. She shouts his name, warning that it's dangerous to approach the water. Throwing the seeds into the water, he begins using his special technique. The seeds begin to grow, taking over the river's surface. Turning to her, he asks if she never saw this in school. She wonders if they're water hyacinths, and he says yes, they purify the water. Saying he's done half the work, the monster appears in front of him. With the sovereign there, he prepares for the great battle about to begin. Grabbing his sword, he prepares to start the freshwater fishing. Casting his bait into the water, he draws the monster's attention to himself. The creature bites the bait, and the battle between them finally begins. The monster screams, saying he is the god of that river to everyone. Irritated, he launches a powerful strike toward the giant snakefish. Dodging the attack, he prepares to launch a counterattack at the creature. Running across the plants, he evades another one of the monster's attacks. With a smile, he uses his technique to create ice items. Launching ice arrows, he hits the monster with several consecutive strikes. Enraged by the attack, the monster screams, asking how dare he. Hit by the strikes, the monster loses reaction and begins to turn. The monster takes the blow, screaming with the force of the impact it received. Burning with pain, the monster calls him a punk with great rage. Using an umbrella, she protects people from a water attack. Impressed, she says he used the plants to purify the water. Even so, she thinks at this rate he still won't be able to win. The monster says he dealt with an energy very difficult to see, but he warns that his tricks won't work against him anymore. With his hoodie zipper, he prepares to use another technique. Throwing more seeds into the water, he begins using more of his abilities. The seeds begin to germinate, transforming into something new in the water. Lotus flowers emerge, growing and taking over the entire river. Jumping between the flowers, he advances to attack the monster once more. Holding his last item, he says that's his last seed. With the seed in hand, he prepares for the final attack. Launching the strike at the creature, he finally manages to defeat the sovereign. The monster says that's the tree that was struck by lightning. He then questions him if he's really going to destroy his body with that. With a smile, he says it's a toy he put his heart into. With a final scream, the monster is defeated and begins to fall apart. He says that's his dart, and he can't simply leave it. With the power in his hand, he prepares for the last attack on the creature. He then launches the power, going all out out toward the monster. The power hits the body dead on of the great creature that was there. Being hit by the electric dart, the monster feels the shock from within. The strike spreads through the river, electrocuting the monster entirely inside. With the creature's defeat, the blue and clear sky appears again. Surprised by the change, everyone observes the sky that's now clear. Smelling the air, a person says it smells like fish. With the battle finished, he says the air is more refreshing now. With sword in hand, he prepares for another one of his strikes. On top of the monster's body, he says he committed a bad act. Kneeling on the creature, he laments that he drew attention to himself again. A woman says that growth was meant for disciples, not for ordinary people. With his eye focused, he says he finally found what he was looking for. Holding the monster's core, he says the item is smaller than he expected. He then says he'll take that as his great reward for the mission. Suddenly, a man appears, shouting and calling him a punk again. Launching a chain attack, he traps him with his special ability. Bound by the chains, he's lifted into the air, unable to move. Shouting at him, the man asks if he knows what he just did. The woman recognizes him and shouts that he's the celestial king Nucha. Remembering the conversation, she realizes everything was based on the elder's will. She then realizes that all of this can't be just a coincidence. She questions him, asking if he'll say what's safe or not. He then asks if her master doesn't know the seriousness of the situation. Shouting, he questions if they're doubting Hanyul's identity. He warns her that if she opens her mouth, she'll bring humiliation to her master. With a laugh, he faces the celestial king with a smile on his face. With a confident expression, he turns to the man in front of him. The man asks if he's lost his fear, and he says no. With a smile, he asks if he did something wrong by any chance. The celestial king stares at him, not knowing how to respond to his question. He says it's already been verified by the app that he has an irregular physique. Turning his face, he asks if about 3 minutes have passed already. He says they appeared pretty fast after the fish died. With an accusatory tone, he says they must have been watching everything. He accuses him of coming quickly because he ruined his disciple's stage. Angrily, the man calls him a punk and tells him to shut up. Suddenly, she's hit by a very strong and unexpected blow. The man says she brought all of that upon herself. He says it doesn't matter how much she tries. Nothing will help. With his eye trembling, he prepares for what's to come. Coughing hard, he recovers from the blow he just received. He says being hit in the stomach is the same as before. Pointing his sword, he prepares to face the celestial king. Surprised by the attitude, the man says he's an insolent punk. Angrily, he asks if Hanyul knows what it means to point. He then asks if Hanyul wants to say his last words. With a smile, he says he won't die and that he can't kill him. The man shouts that his arrogance is as high as the sky. Launching a strike, the man attacks with all his force in his direction. With a smile on his face, he prepares for the counterattack. With the explosion, he thinks Hanyul was defeated. Surprised by what happened, the man doesn't understand where the attack came from. In front of him, another man appears to protect him from the king's attack. The man introduces himself as the immortal spirit Pung Baek. He says he came there because of a request from Lady Yuhua. The celestial king says he wasn't rude, but that the violence was unjustified. The man then says if he picks a fight, he won't avoid it. He warns not to interfere unless he has a good justification. With the situation resolved, everyone withdraws from the battle site. The man questions himself why the lady called the elder to save him. Walking together, they enter a building with a large garden inside. Entering the garden, they observe the place with quite calm and attention. The man then asks if he knew he would show up there today. Confused by the question, he says he didn't understand what he meant. The man then advises him, saying that arrogance leads to downfall. Hearing the elder's words, he remains silent for a brief moment. Thanking the senior for the advice, he says he'll remember everything. Remembering that arrogance leads to downfall, he walks toward his destination. He says he clearly remembers how confused he was that day. That's why he prepared himself since the story of the River Sovereign emerged. He then thinks to himself that he won't go through all of that again. A large and luxurious hall is revealed, with several people waiting for him. Thinking about the situation, he says he won't act without knowing everything. With a smile, he affirms he won't be victimized like before again. In an anonymous post, someone questions why Yuwa is in the Celestial Trinity. A comment says she only cultivates herbs to have similar abilities. It is said that Lady Yuwa has a garden where she cultivates medicinal herbs. Thinking the garden was a rumor, he says he has a plan to get proof. With a smile, he says his plan was to attract her attention. Now standing in front of the lady, he finally puts his plan into practice. A man asks if he knows what is being offered to him. Showing the purgatory seeds, the man says it's rare for them to sprout. He then tells that the item was discovered by mortals on the black market. With a serious look, He says he searched for the seller to punish him. With a smile, the lady asks who the seller was that he was looking for. Bowing on the floor, he says he sinned gravely by doing that. He says he had no choice as his living conditions were very bad. The lady tells him to raise his head and stop all that theater. She says he already paid, but the price for killing her bird is not light. She says she will show her mercy to him one more time. Then she asks why he doesn't work in her garden for her. She says she has a garden where she cultivates her grasses and her trees. With his abilities, she says he would have a good influence on the garden. Thanking her, he says the growth of the plants is because of his technique. He says the technique takes only 1 or 2 days to produce fruits. She then questions him, saying his ability is lacking with him. With a smile, she stares at him with a very thoughtful expression on her face. She says he has more courage than he appears to have at the moment. Surprised by her words, he stares at her without understanding what she wants. With a hand gesture, she says everything is fine and accepts the proposal. She says she will support him with the herbs from her garden and tools. Hearing her proposal, he remains silent for a brief moment. Thanking her, he bows as a sign of respect for her decision. With a smile on his face, he stares at her with an expression of confidence. Alone in the hall, the lady then calls for Ja Cheongbi, asking if she is nearby. Taking a step forward, she approaches the lady to hear what she wants. Walking through the hall, the young woman approaches with her hands in her pockets. She introduces herself as the flower of extinction, Ja Cheongbi. The lady asks for her verdict, and she responds that he is suspicious. She says he is obedient, as if he wanted her to see it personally. Walking through the garden, the servant tells that she heard he killed the bird. She also remembers that he managed to win the battle against the river sovereign. She says he is intelligent and doesn't have much battle experience. With a gesture of her head, she says he is an exaggerated psychopath. The lady asks what a psychopath is, and she says it's a mundane term. She says the lady welcomed him, even knowing he was up to something. With a smile, the lady tells her not to worry about the situation. With a laugh, the lady says if he's not useful, he'll serve as fertilizer. She says she doesn't like the lady, but they decided to work together. With a serious look, she continues thinking about the current situation she finds herself in. She then hopes that he will be more useful than simple fertilizer. Walking down the street, he thinks about the power of the immortal that was hidden. Lady Yuhua's power was at an upper limit of 400. He says he reached 10 stars, but he's not sure about them. The Celestial King had 600, and Pung Bek had 400 power. Taking his phone from his pocket, he prepares to do a verification. A welcome message appears on his phone screen for him. His profile shows that he is a 23-year-old mystic immortal. He says the app showed a wrong level on purpose for her. With a serious face, he calculates that his power is about 45. Walking through the grass, he says he needs to work even harder. Alone in the field, he prepares to start his intense training. With lips pressed together, he tells himself he's there to train. Standing in front of a tree, he prepares to start the training. With a smile, he says today he brought something special for her. Burying the item in the earth, he says it's the sovereign's Sintamani. Kneeling in front of the tree, he prepares to do his part. Looking at the tree, its energy begins to flow in his direction. With a smile on his face, he asks her to give one to him. Meditating in a quiet place, he floated calmly above a large tree. Sitting on the grass, he continued his training with his eyes tightly closed. A solitary tear ended up rolling down his face as he trained. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, looking startled by something around him. Standing up, he comments on how the smell of the peaches was really good. He says that just by breathing there, he managed to increase his attack power. Then he notices a peach, saying it still seems pretty small. Seeing the fruit there, he says how it grew and ripened in this situation. He then wonders if there's no problem with just picking it and eating it. At that moment, someone asks him not to be hasty, leaving Hanyul surprised. Looking down, he spots a small figure standing near the sacred tree. Confused, he wonders if what was in front of him was a bear. He asks the elder being who exactly he could be. Introducing himself, the creature says the ancient father named him Guanak. Smiling, he understands he's talking to the mountain god of Guanaksan. He explains that the master of Mount Guanaksan was quite an unlucky spirit. Going back to the past, officials believed the mountain could affect Hanyang, so they added water energy using a lion statue. Thus, they constantly weakened the energy of Mount Guanaksan for a long time. He asks if that's why the bear is half his height. Guanak says there was no reason to interfere with a devotee's training. Having no strength, the bear couldn't enter the tree's barrier. Saying he needed to eat, he's interrupted by the bear shouting for him to stop. Nervous, the bear shouts saying it would be reckless to do that now. He asks if the problem is picking the peach, not understanding why. Then he questions if the bear is worried about people like himself. Guanak says that's not it, and that soon others will discover the tree. He then warns that at this moment, there's someone waiting for him below. Looking at the sky, he notices a tremendous dark energy coming in their direction. Guanak then points to the energy, saying he had warned about that. He wonders if they're after the peaches from the Tree of Immortality. Holding the peach, he asks if this is the fruit the Monkey King ate. Guanak says what's important is that one of the Taoists is pursuing him. Guanak explains that with so much training, he was able to pass through the tree. Then Guanak says a human doesn't digest the peach, but he does. He asks for the fruit to be able to recover his energy and protect everyone. Smiling, he simply apologizes while holding the freshly picked fruit in his hand. Ignoring the bear, he eats the peach and leaves Guanak totally desperate. Completely furious, Guanak wonders what kind of guy this was in front of him. He thinks that was the peach that made the Monkey King immortal. Now that the fruit has been consumed, Guanak wonders what's going to happen. Sitting on the ground, he begins to meditate to absorb the fruit's properties. Opening his eyes, he's questioned by the bear about how he was feeling. Kneeling, he takes a deep breath, and Guanak asks if he feels any change. He says with a smile that the fruit was very juicy and fresh. Totally speechless, Guanak stares at him with an expression of pure shock. Then from afar, the bear starts screaming, calling him a crazy idiot. Feeling the heat begin, he notices the bear catching fire and screaming behind him. He notes that the heat moves freely through his body without stopping. Losing interest, he says the elder is talking about dying. Asking for help, Guanak asks if he won't help his junior in trouble. Shouting, Guanak says he can't help because he has no power for that. Suddenly, a small thing hits the bear's head, who screams loudly. He accuses Hanyul of throwing stones at him, who says he knew he'd catch it. Looking at his paw, the bear sees with surprise a small, bright seed. He realizes that was a purgatory grass seed already sprouted. Guanak asks if he was really giving him something so precious and rare. Then he throws another seed, which falls directly into Guanak's other paw. Saying that's all he has, he leaves the bear moved. He asks if that would be enough for him to recover soon. Stuttering a little, the bear responds that it was certainly more than enough. Then he asks the small bear what he can do now. Holding the seed, Guanak says from now on he can sell caves. Not understanding anything, he asks if he by any chance heard correctly what the bear said. Guanak explains that the seeds don't restore his power. He can only sell dungeons. Suggesting an action, Guanak says they should deal with whoever is looking for him. Grabbing his phone, he says he can check the location with the device. A screen opens up, and he comments that the phone has this function. Guanak then recognizes it as the map of the area around them. He says he'll take care of the nearest enemy, stating that he's really going to fight. Worried, the bear thinks that with his current power, he'll certainly lose. Running through the forest, he says he's finally managed to find his first target. Sensing the approach, Giju looks up as if on alert. Standing at the top of a cliff, he faces Giju, who was down below. Recognizing the energy, he asks if Hanyul is a disciple of the celestial king Nukcha. Smiling, Giju just stares at him, neither confirming nor denying the question. He then asks if his master gave the order to take him. Confirming the mission, Giju pulls something from inside his own shirt. Showing a weapon, he says his master even gave him that. Smiling, he asks if the other knows what that fox fan is. Guanak says that even a five-tailed fox is extremely rare to see. A spiritual creature emerges from the weapon, startling the little bear in the tree. He comments on the tremendous ghostly energy the weapon was releasing now. Confirming it's the fan, he leaves his opponent a bit surprised there. He asks if the opponent is going to use an explosion in Seoul, a crowded place. Unconcerned, he asks if the other can't feel the energy around. He guarantees that no ability or scream will leak from that isolated location. Smiling, he reveals that it's all because of the Shadow Squad's banner. Guanak understands that the energy was a treasure with the power of beasts. Observing the power, the bear realizes the scale was certainly very large. Irritated, Giju points at the bear and asks why he keeps interrupting him. He then replies that he doesn't know, leaving the enemy even more irritated with everything. Pointing at the bear, he jokes about Guanak explaining everything from the top of the tree. Clenching his fist, he complains about everyone who's interfering with his plans, asking he wants to know why everyone is interfering in his business. He then shouts furiously that the snakefish was his hunting quota. Threatening, he says he'll take his life in place of the fish. He realizes the enemy's power increased fivefold with the sacred item. Holding his staff, he prepares to fight against the item's power. Remembering, he says he distributed his energy throughout the mountain when Shin Soman appeared. At that instant, a great energy begins to gather throughout the forest. Surprised, Guanak realizes he's pulling all the energy back to himself. Activating the first star, he uses the wind distribution technique. With his eyes glowing, he states he's bringing back his energy. The opponent attacks, unleashing a barrage of strikes that advance rapidly. Countering, he spins his staff and launches a massive strike in the opposite direction. His strike advances with speed, meeting the enemy's attacks head-on. Undoing Using the technique, his strike completely neutralizes the advance of the enemy's power. With a focused look, he faces his opponent, preparing to continue. Holding his staff, he concentrates the energy flowing directly from nature. Guanak says he can't believe the human integrated with nature. He wonders if that type of martial art was really possible to exist. Reminding the enemy, he says nothing would leak from that place, right? Smiling, he warns that whoever attacks must also be prepared to be counterattacked. With great anger, his opponent just grits his teeth, unable to respond. Raising his weapon, he shouts, questioning how a bastard without roots dares to do this. Suddenly, he looks at his own body, not understanding what was happening. The weapon begins to drain his energy, making him scream in desperation. Seeing the scene, Hanyul is a bit surprised with the fight's outcome. Falling to the ground, the enemy is defeated, and he lands in front of him. Looking at the body, he comments that the guy was totally screwed at that moment. He explains that the enemy's soul was sucked out by the sacred item's power. Guanak says a sacred item moves mountains, but he doesn't seem to care. Holding his staff, he wonders if a sacred item is really that good. Holding the weapon, he wonders how great its power would be. At that moment, a new opponent's eyes appear, observing everything attentively. Coming from the new enemy's direction, a huge fire explosion happens there. Then a Taoist appears, executing a strike with both hands. Running toward the fallen Giju, he shouts Yang Giju's name. Holding the disciple, he laments the failure, saying it's unbelievable. He then states that everything he did was in self-defense. Facing Hanyul, the Taoist is surrounded by a large amount of fire. Warning, he says self-defense will also apply to the old opponent. Remembering the past, he says he should have burned him to death before. Threatening him, he says he'll burn him and take him to King Nucha. Surrounded by fire, he just faces his new opponent without moving. Fire explosions start happening all over the mountain area. In the middle of the flames, the opponent rushes forward with a powerful strike. Dodging 2 attacks, he prepares to counterattack the Taoist in midair. Using his staff, he defends against a massive fire strike that pushes him back. Spinning his weapon, he manages to deflect several strikes coming his way. He keeps defending himself with great difficulty against the powerful opponent. Taking a direct hit, he ends up being thrown far away by the impact. Gasping, he realizes he's at a major disadvantage against this specific enemy. He complains that of all the elements, it just had to be fire. Floating in the air, the Taoist stares him down with a superior look. Guanak shouts at him to use the fox fan, telling him to channel energy into it. Just then, the little bear gets hit by one of the stray flames. Taking a deep breath, he questions whether he should really use the fox fan. He wonders if his soul wouldn't be sucked out like Yang Gaju's. Deciding to try at least once, he grips the item more firmly. Swinging the staff, he releases a powerful strike with nature's energy. Surprised, the enemy questions how he dares to use the fox fan. With difficulty, the Taoist tries to defend against that power with his bare hands. The two powers clash, causing a massive energy explosion at the site. Shocked, he looks at the result of the collision, seeming not to believe what happened. Fallen on the ground, he realizes the true magnitude of the sacred item's power. Getting up, he starts searching for Guanak, not seeing him anywhere. Taking advantage of the distraction, the enemy attacks him with a high-speed strike. Getting hit, he can't avoid the attack and feels the full impact. Kneeling, he puts his hand on his chest, feeling the wound from the strike he received. Coughing, he says he thinks one of his organs was pierced in the attack. The enemy calls him a bastard, looking at him with a superior gaze. He says that Hanyul wasn't satisfied with just turning his disciple into an imbecile. On the ground, he thinks about how he survived and if all immortals are like this. Screaming that this will be the last one, he launches a new fire strike in his direction. Using the fan, he tries to defend himself from the strikes hitting him non-stop. He then receives a powerful blow that throws him very far from there. He ends up coughing, feeling the force of the wound he just received in his chest. The enemy says he won't let him use such petty tricks anymore. He warns that now he'll take him directly to the celestial king Nucha. Fallen on the ground, he wonders if this is how he's going to die now. He laments that if his body weren't injured, the fight would be different. Suddenly, he wonders why the pain disappeared out of nowhere. Right then, the properties of the immortality peach start taking effect. The drug devourer's analysis is completed, releasing all the power. Shifting to the past, the Monkey King wanted freedom and obtained his skin. He endured 49 days in the eightfold celestial path without problems. Despite the pressure, his skin lasted for 500 years without any damage. Dongbangsak wanted a body that would make him sick, so he took the cells. In the end, even the king of the underworld gave up trying to take him. With the drug being consumed, his body begins to undergo a transformation. The peach's function creates an apparatus optimized for his own element. And so, Hanyul got what he wanted, a completely regenerated new liver. His new liver filled his body from head to toe with cold water. Startled, the enemy is shocked, feeling that completely different energy. He wonders how Hanyul got water energy energy out of nowhere. With great anger, the duist stares at him, calling him a punk. Then he realizes that the Hanyul in front of him was actually an irregular. Smiling, he says he doesn't know how this happened, but he felt good. He comments that meanwhile, the sensation is great, since it's not hot. Preparing himself, he uses the fox fan with his new water energy. Swinging the weapon, he launches a powerful strike against his old opponent. Several water strikes surround the enemy, who's left with nowhere to run. Completely desperate, the duist wonders how all of this can be possible. With the power of water, the attack destroys everything that was at the site. Screaming, Guanak slaps his face, asking him to open his eyes. Fallen on the ground, he wakes up and Guanak asks if he's recovered yet. Sitting down, Guanak asks what he did to leave the place full of water. Not understanding, he questions what water the little bear was talking about. Looking around, he realizes the entire mountain was flooded by water. He notices the surrounding trees were also destroyed by the ability. Not even the ground escaped, being destroyed by the power. Guanak shouts, asking the boy to say something about the situation. Seeing the river he created, he thinks all of this was a huge mess. On the ground, the duist's body lay completely motionless and defeated. Searching the body, he wonders where the barrier flag could be. That's when he ends up finding something, wondering what it could be. He then holds a small red pouch with a strange symbol in the middle. Guanak says that's a treasure pouch, leaving Hanyul confused. Explaining, the bear says it's a magic pouch for storing items. Guanak shouts that there's no time for this, warning that others will come. Thoughtful, he seems to be hatching some kind of plan for the situation. Looking at the body on the ground, he seemed to have a sudden idea. Grabbing the body, he throws it on his back, and Guanak asks where he's going. He then throws the duist's body into the middle of the river he created. Shocked, Guanak asks what he's thinking doing something like that. Guanak says if they stay, they'll discover the peach tree. Smiling, he asks Guanak to wait just 1 second. Then he uses his technique, freezing everything around with the power of water. He uses the second art of the chance, the execution of the winds of light. With that, the collection of fallen leaves covers the duist's body on the ground. Guanak is shocked, unable to believe what he was seeing happen before him. He realizes the tree is absorbing the body to generate a new fruit. Guanak says fortunately, they didn't arrive too late to stop the others. Seeing 2 people approaching, he says they escaped by a hair. Outside, the men wonder where he is, not seeing the barrier. Guanak complains that if the enemy wasn't fire-based, they'd have a new fruit. Looking up, he notices the tree was now full of flowers. He asks about the medicinal effect, but Guanak says it's a secret treasure. Guanak thinks that since he didn't change, the fruit was too young. He thinks about the power of his liver and what a ripe fruit would do. With his eyes closed, he concentrates, with Guanak floating beside him. Guanak calls his attention, wanting to ask the boy something. Shyly, he please asks if he can see the world outside. He says that's no problem, since he can use his alter ego. Then he understands that to maintain form, the bear will be a parasite. Guanak complains it can't be helped, since nobody leaves offerings for him. He agrees to take the bear, who gets excited about the new opportunity. In return, he asks Guanak to give him something he has. Happy, the little bear throws a club in the direction of the boy who catches it. He wonders if that would be a motdongsan, not understanding what it was. Guanak then says it's not that, and begins to give an explanation. For a long time, a certain presence appeared throughout East Asia. This presence was a fantasy race with abilities, the feared goblins. They not only had physical abilities, but also a very spiritual physique. Their nature was enhanced by tools that improved all their abilities. These tools were the helmet and the famous club of the strongest goblins. Holding the club, he asks if he can use it, remembering an ancient rule. Guanak says the treasure can be traded with a goblin for anything. He explains that losing the weapon means the owner also loses their power. Realizing the situation, he understands that Guanak doesn't know who the owner is. Analyzing the club, he says that from what it seems, it doesn't sound too bad. Agreeing to go together, he makes the little bear extremely happy and grateful. With the excited bear on his shoulder, he prepares for the new journey. Going to the city, he says they'll now work for the Lady of the Garden. Remembering the victory, he now had Yangaju's items as his own. Arriving in Seoul, the news was about the G22 summit that would happen on the 31st. The government was making special arrangements to meet the high-class immortals. Inside the car, a man comments that the reason for the summit was Marvel Tower. Confused, he asks if the name was Babel, and the man quickly confirms. It was the Tower of Babel, built to reach the heavens by ancient humans. The conversation was about how rebuilding the tower would unify the world's languages. Inside the car, he hears about how there are many businesses based on translation. He thought this whole story wouldn't have anything anything to do with him. That's when he gets startled, feeling something strange and unexpected on the road. Then the car suddenly stops, with a mysterious figure in front of it. Startled, the driver asks what happened and if a monster appeared. He then looks at the figure, getting a little surprised by who it was. Pulling the hood back, the figure finally reveals who they really were. Looking at them, Jachombi simply orders them to get out of the car now. Stepping out of the car, he introduces himself to the young woman as Jachombi. She says she was requested to be his assistant for now. She asks him to follow her, saying she doesn't care what he does. Threateningly, she says her name must not be involved in his foolishness. Smiling, he responds yes, and that he'll be very careful with everything. Looking at his phone, he reads her name while the bear copies the phone case. He then asks the bear if by chance he knows her from somewhere. Gwanak says he wants to tell her weakness, leaving Hanyul curious. The bear then says her weakness is that she likes handsome men. Not understanding, he asks what Gwanak meant by that information. Going back to the past, there was a man famous for his elegance in Jeju. Moon Dor-young, son of a divinity, was known for being very handsome. Jachongbi, a common girl, saw Moon Dor-young while he was taking a bath. Upon seeing him, she became completely enchanted by the beauty of the Hanyul in front of her. At that moment, she awakened her spiritual body, even with the gates of heaven closed. He says she was lying, but Gwanak says it's not impossible. The bear explains that some awaken when body and mind are in shock. Since she had the same physique, Moon Dor-young's family accepted her. Then the bold Jachongbi began to go after Moon Dor-young with everything. He asks if the Hanyul let a love that wouldn't work out begin. Saying she had no reasons to see him, she decided to create her own reasons. With her new power, she was determined to conquer everything she wanted. In less than 100 years, Jachongbi conquered the entire island of Jeju. She became known as the flower that will reach the heavens and sweep the world. Once she became a dynast, she asked him for marriage formally. While she dreamed of the future, the father and son conquered Jeju. On the wedding day, while she was getting ready, someone appeared to meet her. She then turns around, seeing the figure standing in front of her. Then two men advance toward her, preparing a very powerful strike. Screaming for her to die, the men used the power of the extinction flower. Instead of her beloved, she found several armed assassins in front of her. With red eyes, she became very angry at that whole situation. Taking a step, she prepares to fight against all who betrayed her. Floating in the air, she advances toward the men to start fighting. With a powerful strike, she attacks one of the assassins with all her strength. Launching an energy blast, she hits all the enemies at the same time. Even being attacked, with her ability, they couldn't go anywhere. That fight was recorded as a great battle that almost sank the island. In the end of it all, the fight finally reached a conclusion for them. The one who lost the fight was Jachongbi, who screamed with all her strength. She herself, for having been betrayed by love, ended up being the big loser. Gwanak says she was approached for having skills and beautiful faces. He finishes saying that if the princess didn't intervene, she would be expelled. Gwanak says he doesn't need to feel relieved because she wouldn't hate him. Threatening the little bear, he asks if by chance he wants to go back to the mountain. Then Jachongbi appears, asking what he was doing standing there in the way. Arriving at the location, he comes across a huge staircase and a large gate. Running, he apologizes, and she tells him to climb up right away. She explains that there are 6 gardens in the castle, all numbered from 1 to 6. Opening a door, she says the only place he can stay is the 6th garden. He wonders if that would be the lowest place of all there. Looking inside, he's surprised at what he was seeing ahead. He can't believe there are 2 suns in that completely deserted and dry place. She explains that now he's the lord of that garden and must protect it. Asking about the former lord, she says the place has been closed for 100 years. He realizes that with the reopening, the 6th garden was now very valuable. She says it's not unpaid work, and he just agrees with the condition. He then agrees with the situation, while she starts dancing there. Confused, he wonders if the music she was listening to was in Japanese. Then she screams, trying to grab her phone, which was in her pocket. Flying through the air, the phone escapes and goes toward Hanyul. On the screen, a call from a group of men appears with a song. Remembering her story, he's shocked and thinks about being careful. Very carefully, he tries to talk to her, measuring his words well. Saying he respects her, he stands still waiting for her reaction there. Slowly opening his eyes, he sees the small bear's face in front of him. Gwanak then says he finally woke up, while holding a small red seed. Confused, he just stares at the small bear, not understanding what was happening. Lying on the ground, he asks what happened, and Gwanak says 2 hours have passed. He sits up, and Gwanak explains it was a clean and precise strike. Thinking about the defeat, he hears the bear say that the seeds from there were excellent. He understands that she'll watch over the place until the next big harvest. Then he realizes that if he shows his ability, they'll ask him to cultivate more. He thinks about cultivating the peaches from the tree of immortality or something else. Determined, he decides to use the 6th garden to become even stronger than before. He won't let anyone touch him or his family ever again. To do that, he says first of all he needed to start the work. Looking at the messy field, he decides he's going to do something about that. Turning around, he grabs his backpack and puts it on his back to leave. Opening the case, he sees that his old staff was completely burned out. He says he overdid it last time, that's why the staff ended up like this. With force, he plants what was left of the wooden staff into the ground. Thanking it, he says the weapon saved his life many times. Then he says that from now on, the staff can finally rest. Gwanak can't believe he could pray so sincerely for an object. Gwanak thinks the staff was just a plant, but could ascend without regrets. At that moment, a small leaf begins to sprout from the staff planted in the ground. Suddenly, the small leaf transforms into a huge tree in front of them. From the ground, several roots begin to sprout and spread throughout the entire field. The roots advance quickly, spreading across the entire terrain rapidly. Then the roots begin to form a fence around the whole plantation. Shocked, he wonders how all of that could be happening so fast. The tree that would take a month to repair itself grew in an instant. Pointing at the dried trees, he uses his ability and shouts for them to rise. Using the 9th art of chance, he begins the work of the land. He says the 2 new helpers will be in charge of agricultural duties. The 2 trees then plant their feet on the ground, preparing for work. With a glow, the trees begin to transform into something completely different. Then the trees become 2 guardians, ready to protect the entire garden. Gwanak says that was incredible, leaving Hanyul with a confident smile. The bear praises the ability, saying that not even high-ranking immortals use it. Tired, he says he needs to rest a bit, as he spent a lot of energy. Arriving at the house, Gwanak offers him a jujube that just ripened there. Entering, he realizes the place was much more spacious than he thought. Gwanak says the former lord was Park Hanyul, also known as Gumijinin. Dropping the backpack, he prepares to recover some of his energy. Sitting down, he says he'll use breathing techniques to recover. Meditating, he begins to gather the energy that was scattered throughout the place. Suddenly, he opens his eyes, feeling that something was quite different. Gwanak asks what's wrong, and he stands up, seeming to have sensed something. He says he felt the plant's pulse responding to his breathing there. Then he realizes that maybe the pulse was coming from beneath the floor. Using the seed, he decides he'll use its power to investigate. With the energy, he creates a wooden pickaxe with the seed's power. With the pickaxe, he strikes the ground, and Gwanak asks what he's doing. Continuing, he strikes the ground harder, trying to break the floor. With one more strike, the floor finally begins to crack from the impact. Then the floor breaks and he ends up falling into the hole that opened up. Sitting, he looks around, seeing a red glow coming from somewhere. He wonders what that is, and sees a large magic circle on the ground. Gwanak says it's a barrier formation drawn with someone's blood. Touching the circle, he feels that the pulse was coming from down below. With his power, he prepares to break the barrier in front of him. With one strike, he destroys the barrier, and the entire seal breaks. Looking down, the 2 are surprised by what they just found. Then they wonder if that could be some kind of hidden secret room. Jumping down inside, the former lord of the 6th garden begins to introduce himself. Near the table, he says that this is for the next lord of the garden. The message informs about all the atrocities committed by the powerful Lady Yuhua. The story begins one day, when he was heading home with his friends. He accidentally entered a shrine and was possessed by a ghost. A kind scholar passing by asked if he was all right and helped him. He threw red beans and said that Hanyul should be fine now. Then he says that if a ghost attached itself, his spiritual physique was open. The man warns him to leave that place, or he'd be pursued by mortals and immortals. He tells him not to worry, as he knew an immortal who could help. So he followed the scholar and entered Lady Yua's pavilion. The man said that if he cultivated his moral sense, he could transcend. With no progress, he began doing all kinds of manual labor. Eventually, his debt became like running water, without end or beginning. At 30 years old, he thought nothing could be done, but that wasn't the case. Then he met a child who came from the human world, just like himself. The circumstances in which the child arrived there were very shocking to him. They were the same circumstances as how he arrived, possessed by a ghost. He realized it wasn't from entering a shrine that he was possessed, but rather by the scholar who threw ghosts at him to open his spiritual physique. He was just a pawn, a scapegoat who could be replaced at any moment. After learning the story, he realized he couldn't live as a servant, so he bowed and begged for them to teach him the art of the earth. He began to practice, learning to use the brush for his arts. However, even though he learned to do it, it wasn't enough. Over time, he could no longer hold the brush firmly. His mortal body, which had no power, grew rusty as he aged. Because of his work, he was compared to foxtail grass. They said he looked like the weed that grows everywhere. At that, he thought about ending his life, as he felt very powerless. But then, when he was at his limit, something totally unexpected happened. A miracle happened, and Lady Yuwa appeared before him and everyone. She rewarded him with gratitude for having sacrificed so much for them. He received lordship of the sixth garden and the arts of the earth dragon. He felt so moved that a tear ended up rolling down his face. Then he promised not to forget the grace and fulfill his duties as lord. From that day forward, he dedicated himself to training the dragon arts. His power improved day after day, with much training and total dedication. Finally, he reached the point of nearly becoming a mystic immortal. However, even though he achieved much, his body grew weaker and weaker. Then he realized the secret of the earth dragon arts he was using. The effect of the arts was excellent, but it had a big and terrible problem. The power was absorbed by the medicinal herbs of the garden and not by him. Without realizing it, he became living fertilizer for all the plants. Reading the diary, he falls silent, processing all the shocking information. He thinks he only saw that kind of act on TV, finding it all disgusting. He says that, although he presumed, there's nothing unusual in the content. Gwanak explains that it's a common practice to keep the immortal realm functioning. He wonders if this means he could become like Gumijin. The diary said that whoever broke the barrier was capable and outstanding. For his juniors, he left a stolen treasure to protect their lives. Gwanak says they're mandrake ginseng seeds, cultivated by colored people. He's surprised, as the seeds scream to take people's souls away. He complains that there was nothing written about that in the Lord's diary. Holding the object, he finds it strange and can't identify what it is. He realizes the beat he felt didn't come from the seeds, but from that thing. Deciding to investigate, he tries to make the object grow a bit with his energy. Suddenly, the object explodes, throwing him away with the force of the impact. Gwanak asks if he's alright, as he gets up from the ground. Looking at the object, he realizes that thing was refusing to grow. He then wonders what the hell that strange object in front of him would be. Holding the object, he stares at it, feeling that something was wrong. Feeling the familiarity, he realizes that was the shaft of a blade. Gwanak then asks what happened to the blade of that weapon there. In another place, Lady Yuwa appears, with a serious expression on her face. Arriving at a palace, she prepares to meet with the person. Guards bow as she passes, walking with an air of superiority. Smiling, she says the other person traveled to that humble place. Floating, a woman appears in front of Lady Yuwa with a serious look. The woman introduces herself as being the master of the Isonokami shrine. She says she heard the lady had a treasure in her main palace. With a cold look, Lady Yuwa just stares at the woman in front of her. The woman says she wants back the shaft of the seven-branched blade. The object then begins to glow, revealing its true form to both of them. The seven-branched sword was a strange item, just like the kingdom of Baekje. Unlike other kingdoms, Baekje had no special power for its foundation, but King Anjo established Baekje using only his strength, awakening his power late. Being a genius, he learned on his own to handle his energy, creating a martial art. As time passed, because of weak kings, the kingdom of Baekje eventually fell into decline. Only King Junchago remained, a prince who forged the rare seven-branched sword. Someone then asks if the hilt wasn't originally delivered together with the blade. They remember that the messenger who carried it faced a natural disaster and didn't survive. Fortunately, the ship was found, but only the blade of the sword could be delivered. Then the woman asks if they're saying the sword really has a hilt. She continues, saying it's strange since it seems they discovered this recently. Then she questions why she's being interrogated about the item's whereabouts now. In the name of the sanctuary, she came to propose a celestial fight 6 months from now. Wanting to know more, the woman asks what the conditions for this fight would be. She says they'll wager the blade of the seven-branched sword in the fight. If they win, they can take an item from her property, searching for the hilt. Agreeing with the proposal, she simply accepts the challenge that was made, but she says she'd like to add one more condition to their agreement. 6 months later, the day of the great confrontation had finally arrived for everyone. Through the streets, they comment that the celestial fight will be broadcast for everyone to see. They talk, saying that Lady Yuwa herself wanted to reveal the event to everyone. Getting close to the garden, he asks them not to cause problems during the visit. Everyone agrees with the request and then advances into that place. Entering the place, they come across an extremely well-maintained and beautiful garden. Surprised, They wonder if this was really the desolate place from before. Then, a Hanyul appears eating a fruit, noticing the group's arrival. Sitting there, he says the guests have finally arrived for the big meeting. Seeing that scene, one of the men in the group calls him rude. He shouts saying that Senior Lee Young is an immortal and demands respect. Extending his hand, he approaches to greet the newly arrived group. Introducing himself, he says his name is Park Hanyul, and he's responsible for the 6th garden. Lee Young also introduces himself, saying he came to report the garden's progress. Looking confused, the group doesn't seem to understand the situation unfolding there. Showing his identification, he asks why the newcomers force him to be called Senior. On the information screen, it shows that Park Hanyul is a celestial immortal of only 23 years old. Completely shocked, they realize he's a powerful celestial immortal. Changing scenes, the men are punished while a conversation about the celestial fight happens. He explains that 2 players from each side will fight against the Japanese side. Park comments he didn't know about the event, and Lee Young confirms he'll participate. Then it's revealed that Lee Young awakened his powers during the Korean War. Park says he doesn't trust immortals, but he feels sincerity coming from Lee Young. He remembers that Lee apologized for the other's behavior, suggesting a friendship. Park is surprised he'll participate, but Lee says he received the opportunity. Lee then mentions that the best celestial immortal is Go Chawul, about to evolve. Commenting, he calls himself lucky to fight with someone of that level. At that, he becomes thoughtful hearing Go Chawul's name. Changing scenes, a woman begins to address her gathered group. She informs everyone that the sanctuary finally accepted the proposal they made. She says if they have an active role, they'll receive more praise than Shin-san. At that moment, a servant approaches running, and she asks what he wants. Wanting to know, she asks how the Lord of the 6th Garden managed to find her. Calling him impudent, she orders to tell him to wait, as she's busy. After hearing the response, she turns completely shocked by what was said. Go Chawul stands up furious, shouting about how the rookie dared to challenge him. The other man says he doesn't mind dealing with him, leaving Go Chawul surprised. Go Hyunhwa says there's a rumor about him being afraid to fight. The woman agrees with the point, leaving Hanyul even more surprised. Challenging him, she asks directly if he can compete with the Lord of the 6th Garden. He seems to be left speechless before her direct question. Gritting his teeth, he seems to have finally made a decision. In the main courtyard, the 2 fighters face each other for the start of the duel. In the stands, the woman and her servants observe the fights beginning attentively. Other groups also gather, whispering while they wait for the combat to begin. Announcing his name, everyone turns to the Lord of the 6th Garden. Go Chawul then prepares, gathering energy to unleash a powerful blow. With a furious look, he shouts for his opponent not to blame him later. Park Hanyul just watches him, noting the serious look coming from his opponent. With a smile on his face, he prepares because the battle is finally about to begin. Preparing a powerful strike, he concentrates his energy into multiple projectiles for the attack. Launching the attack, the blows explode around Park, who shields himself from everything. At that moment, Hanyul prepares a counterattack, concentrating his own energy in his hand. He then defends himself from the incoming blow, creating a protection in front of him. His opponent shouts, asking if he thinks he can stop the attack with a shield. His defense begins to fall apart, with the leaves slowly dropping to the ground. With a smile, he says he won't let him play with those leaves again. Then he combines all the strikes into one, preparing an even stronger attack. Shouting, he warns his opponent that this will be his definitive end in the fight. Hanyul apologizes, saying that his own strike is already fully charged. He states that in truth, it's the opponent who is about to be defeated. Releasing his power, he launches an immense energy blast in the direction of his rival. Being hit directly, his opponent is thrown backward by the force of the blow. Shocked, he realizes that it's not just a shield, but absorbs his power. His hand then makes direct contact with his opponent's strike in the air. A massive energy explosion happens, ending the confrontation between the two. Asking forgiveness for the interference, a man approaches him on the battlefield. Fallen on the ground, he stares at the man who just interrupted his fight. He says he couldn't let them lose one of their own when the winner was obvious. Shouting to his godmother, he insists he can still keep fighting. Damduk then states with certainty that the victory belonged to Taoist Park. He promises that with his talents, he will never bring shame to their pavilion. The woman simply remains silent, watching the entire situation unfold there. She agrees, saying that his talents do seem to be truly very precise. Being called to come up, he wonders why she would accept defeat so easily. Looking at the mysterious man, he questions who he really is. The man simply stands there with a very calm expression on his face. At that moment, the scene shifts to inside one of the buildings of that large place. She then asks what kind of training he's been doing for the past 6 months. He explains that because of his rare element, the pace of his training is fast. He says he knows he was brought to cultivate something and that she can give orders. She hears that if she trusts him, He promises he will never betray her. Calling him bold, she says that's what he was thinking all along. She tells him to focus on the competition, and he responds that he'll be waiting. At the moment he was leaving, he seems to have remembered something. Turning back, he then asks if he can leave that place for a while. Shifting to a city, the scene shows a street with many people and shops. Walking along the sidewalk, Hanyul is now in the company of the mysterious man. Surprised by the company, he asks what that senior's name is. Introducing himself, he says his name is Damdok, but he can be called comfortably. Shocked, he realizes that Damdok is the legendary Gwanggaeto the Great. Observing his companion, he notices the man seems much more relaxed than before. They then stop, and he looks confused at a menu with various foods. Asking if he wants a drink, he approaches the counter to place the orders. Afterward, the two walk down the street, enjoying the food and drinks they bought. He says he's glad he's having fun, despite the things he's heard. Damduk tells him he became immortal with the help of Lady Yuwa after his death. Remembering the story, he reflects that Gwanggaeto the Great really did die very young. He wanted to be remembered, but realizes that even without him, they created a wonderful world. Thanking him for the long conversation, he says he was able to enjoy the human world quite a bit. With a smile, Hanyul responds that it was nothing, and not to worry. Showing the way, he points out they can see Gwangwamun if they go that way. Going in that direction, they come across a man holding a protest sign. Approaching, they see a crowd of people protesting against human sacrifices. On a stage, a man gives a speech to the public, condemning the government's actions. Shocked by the scene, he asks Hanyul if he's understanding this correctly. With great anger, he can't believe the country he protected now allows sacrifices. He wants to go to the country's leader, but Hanyul stops him, asking him to wait. Suddenly, the sky darkens, and a black circle appears, surprising everyone. Looking up, they realize a solar eclipse is happening in the sky. Calling out to Hanyul, he asks him to protect the people at that exact moment. Then he advances shouting, ordering everyone to hurry and leave that place. Amid the chaos, people are struck and scream desperately for help. Advancing, he tries to protect as many people as he can from the attacks. He then says those beings are creatures who don't know their places. Asking what he's doing, he prepares for a new attack. Shouting loudly, he leaps and charges forward with a strike against his opponent. Preparing to attack, he spins his weapon in the air with great force. Hitting the ground, his blow causes massive destruction at the site. After the dust settles, only a piece of cloth remains on the ground. Then a hand appears, emerging from within the broken ground. Surprised by the screams, he realizes the attack isn't over yet. Several creatures appear, attacking people running desperately through the street. One of the beings advances, attacking one of the civilians with a quick strike. Watching everything, he becomes furious at what those beings are doing. Being hit by surprise, he's thrown back by the blow. He then falls to the ground, unable to defend himself from the enemy attack. A new opponent emerges, saying he didn't expect to find him in that place. Staring down at him, he calls him a wanderer in the wrong world. He then says he'll take his life in the name of Hwalbin. He then responds saying that all of this is complete nonsense he's hearing. Sensing the energy, he recognizes him as one of the agents of the Nuksha group. He remembers the yin energy and the woman he sensed since the destruction. His opponent then asks if he was close to Yang Gaju by any chance. Hearing the question, he just grits his teeth with great force at the spot. He says that no matter what happens, he'll make him pay for his crimes. With a smile, he asks if the opponent wants him to pay for his crimes. Concentrating his energy, he creates a large circle of power right at his feet. His power then begins to spread across the entire ground of that place. Seeing the scene, his opponent tells him not to make him laugh at that situation. He responds that the ones who have to pay for their crimes are all of them present there. At that moment, a huge army of wooden creatures emerges right behind Hanyul. The creatures then begin to advance toward the enemies who are there. One of the creatures lands a hit on one of the beings that was at the site. The opponent then attacks with a blow that hits several of the summoned beings. Shouting, he orders them to release the Shutterwalks immediately against his enemy. Seeking revenge, she sends the creatures to attack the man who killed her husband. Surrounded by the spirits, he realizes it's going to be difficult to deal with them that way. Thinking about his strategy, he remembers the pipe he bought at the market. Grabbing the item, he brings it to his mouth to use it in battle. Consuming the mandrake, he prepares to use the properties of that drug. With the power activated, his muscle strength and concentration are drastically enhanced. Using his ability, a small plant begins to sprout from the concrete ground. Calling them punks, his hand transforms, and he rips the plant from the ground. Surrounded by his weapons, he warns that he won't miss any of his targets. Taking a step forward, he propels himself to begin his counterattack. He then swings his new weapon, landing a hit on one of the creatures. Running among the enemies, he begins to fight against all of them at the same time. He advances and attacks the various evil spirits that keep coming in his direction. After the blows, the plant weapons he was using end up breaking on the ground. Even surrounded by enemies, he continues fighting against all who appear. With a smile, she says it doesn't matter how many ghosts they use against him. Shouting at her men, she asks what they're doing and orders them to release more monsters. She then screams for all her men to capture that annoying fly, but suddenly a strange smoke begins to take over the entire place. Shocked by this, Sinai begins to feel sick from that smoke. All her men begin to scream desperately, begging for the smoke to go away. Unable to move, one of them asks for help while falling to the ground. Even their leader begins to cough, feeling the effect of the smoke. She then falls to her knees on the ground, without strength to continue standing. Looking at his opponent, he observes the entire situation unfold at the sight. He then asks if they think he's crazy enough to play around with swords. Fallen on the ground, she realizes that maybe the problem is that strange smoke. He explains that mandrake is a detoxifier for him, but for them it's poison. With the pipe in his mouth, he comments on how scary secondhand smoke is. Fallen on the ground, the woman begins to gasp, feeling the poison in her body. With blood running from her mouth, she desperately tries to say something. At that moment, she screams for her father, while a mysterious light shines in the sky. An energy blast is then fired, throwing Hanyul far away with the impact. Hearing a familiar voice, he's surprised to hear someone call him. Damduk appears holding the enemy, asking if he's the one they were talking about. Astonished, he recognizes the man as the powerful celestial king Nukcha. Screaming for her father, she watches him get thrown back by a powerful strike. Lying on the ground, he asks who the hell they are to interfere. He then asks if they happen to know who they're talking to. Damduk responds that it doesn't matter, since he committed a sin against the people. While being held down, he starts laughing, ignoring the warning not to resist. Releasing his power, he wonders what kind of nonsense they were talking about. With a smile, he tells his opponent to remember one thing before dying. He says he won't leave any mortal alive, beginning to absorb their energy. Hanyul observes that he's absorbing the strength of both the living and the dead. He becomes furious at Hwalben for dragging innocent people into this mess. Then the villain concentrates his power, preparing a new and powerful strike. Seeing the power of the strike, he doesn't know how to stop that attack. Gripping his sword, he prepares to use another method for the fight. Watching the battle, he wonders if that could be an art from ancient times. Turning to Hanyul, he asks him to lend his sword. Extending his hand, he prepares for action. Concentrating great power. Shouting his name, Hanyul throws the sword toward him with all his strength. Thanking him, he catches the sword in midair, which now glows with new energy. With a powerful strike, he charges forward and splits the opponent's attack in half. He then says he has no right to punish someone from the immortal realm, but he'll do it for the sins he committed against all the innocent people. He continues saying that the crime of taking the lives of other immortals will be punished by him, who will apply the punishment as a member of the mystical realm. Leaping into the air, he charges full force at his opponent. Screaming in pain and hatred, the villain is struck head-on by the blow. Delivering multiple strikes, he attacks the enemy with a sequence of swift attacks. After the dust settles, they observe the result of the battle that ended. With the situation resolved, he stands still with the sword in hand. On the news, it's reported that all the terrorists were arrested after the action. The report continues, identifying the suspects as being from the organization called Hwalben. The news informs that the government is already dealing with the attack situation. Meanwhile, a YouTuber begins analyzing the recent incident that happened in Gwanghwamun. Saying the Immortal Society did nothing, he claims to have footage of the scene. Showing the video, he says those two beings are the true heroes. He continues, asking if people don't remember that familiar hero. Watching the broadcast, the woman says that's enough, interrupting whoever was speaking. She then turns around, looking directly at the two standing before her. Taking responsibility, he says he caused a problem by interfering in the human world. He states that he won't avoid any punishment she wants to apply. Then she questions how he dares to face her after they acted together like that. He seems a bit surprised to hear what she just said. Bowing his head, he quickly apologizes for his behavior. Looking at her, he notices a slight change in the woman's expression. She then tells Damduk to raise his head, and he faces her. Explaining her actions, she says she reprimands them to be more cautious in the future. She warns Hanyul to prepare for disciplinary action, and he agrees. With the situation resolved, they're finally dismissed and can leave. Walking back, he comments on how he feels like he's been away from the the garden for days. Sitting down, he says he can finally check something he's been wanting to. With the books in hand, he prepares to analyze all that material. He didn't expect it to be hidden in the statue of King Sejong the Great. Opening one of the scrolls, he notes that the statue has no special powers. The little bear says that's Yi-do's calligraphy, leaving him shocked. He explains that Yi-do was the name of the vile boy from the Yi family. Hanyul asks what he did wrong, leaving the bear even more irritated. With great anger, he says that because of the Yi family, he looks like this. While the bear keeps complaining, he begins to read the scroll carefully. Reading the diary, he sees the note about Hyang having cleaned the blood. Completely shocked, he realizes that who wrote that was King Sejong the Great. In the diary, the king says he's not afraid of death, but of his son. His only concern now was with the people he would leave behind. He feared that after his death, wrong immortals would seize power for themselves. Remembering the past, many lives were lost because of the ancient deities. Before that era returns, the people need power to face the immortals. He then discovers runes that, when combined, can create great power. The bear believes he wanted to create a power system with language, but with human limitation, he thinks the king couldn't finish. His final wish was that everyone could use the power of the 28 letters. Smiling, he congratulates the ancient king for his great and incredible final achievement. The future the great king wanted had finally become a reality. With his arms crossed, he seems to be thinking about how to use his new power. Focusing his energy, he prepares to test the ability he just learned. With a touch on the book, he activates the power of the words written there. Surprised, he sees several pieces of wood floating in front of him out of nowhere. He's shocked to realize that this is his true attack power. Reflecting on the power, he remembers that he just needs to speak the words to use it. With a simple command, he tests a new word to see the result. The pieces of wood then begin to catch fire right in front of him. Completely amazed, he can't believe what he just did. Celebrating, he shouts the word again, making the fire grow even larger. Shouting with joy, he continues testing his power, catching someone's attention. The bear then appears, asking why he's playing with fire there. Not understanding, the bear asks how he managed to create fire without having the power for it. He says that sometimes he just wants to break the routine, and the bear asks him to be careful. Thoughtful, he realizes that the louder he speaks, the stronger the power becomes. He wonders if speaking a word louder consumes more energy to use. Then he thinks if several people speaking the same word would have a greater effect. Falling silent, he reflects on the best way to use his power. He then realizes he can create something more powerful with long, meaningful phrases. Making a decision, he prepares to test his new theory about the power. Shouting to the sky, he asks it to lament and cry as much as it wants. After his words, the sky opens up and remains peaceful for a moment. He then says he felt a little embarrassed for shouting like that. Suddenly, he's startled by Jachiyanbi, who appears right in front of him. With a smile on her face, she watches him closely after appearing there. Very startled, he asks when she arrived at that place without him seeing. Imitating his action, she begins to shout the same words he said before. She continues shouting, saying she's the best and the craziest person of all. Telling him not to worry, she says she respects what he did. She then stares at him with a confident smile, ending the moment between them. Totally embarrassed, he can't believe the situation that just happened there. Bowing, he asks why she came there, and she responds about the fight. She congratulates him for defeating Go Chawul and says he's improving fast. With a red face, he becomes completely flustered hearing her compliment. He explains he came because he made a bet and went out to prepare a gift. Seeing that she's well taken care of, he realizes he doesn't need to worry anymore. Throwing the gift to her, he hands her what he had gone to get outside. She asks what it is, and he says it's a scripture for the fight. Confused, she asks who sent that to be delivered to her there. He then reveals it was a sage, the very father of that girl who was there. Gritting his teeth, he becomes very angry hearing that revelation. Grabbing her arm, he holds her tightly, leaving her startled. He then asks where she met the person who claimed to be his father. She responds that she met him in a place called Shenfu. Then the story of Hwanung is told, about how he descended from the heavens. The bear became human, and with Hwanung, created a new story for Korea. But in this myth, it's not remembered that Eungnyo wasn't Hwanung's legitimate wife. Hwanung ruled the human world with his family in the sacred place known as Shenfu. She reveals that his father is married to Hwanung's youngest princess. She says she had already finished her work when his father approached her. He said his son was grateful to the palace and therefore wanted to help. He warned about future problems and wrote something important on that scroll to help. After hearing this, he says he thought his father had simply abandoned the family. He remembers his father spent all the fortune and accumulated many debts. In the end, Because of him, his grandmother ended up dying for absolutely nothing. Angrily, he says it seems his father managed to find a new family. She then encourages him to open it, saying it's a very good item. Curious, he wonders what his father would have given him at that moment. With wide eyes, he's surprised by the item that's inside there. Inside the box, he finds a scripture in the form of a sealed fan. The scripture was created to tame and seal beasts and evil spirits inside the fan. They mention that a fan with 24 blades is high quality, but the best has more. Seeing that the fan has 72 blades, he wonders why he received something so good. She then explains the fan can absorb almost all spirits, if he wants to use it. Laughing hard, he responds that he'll definitely take good care of that precious treasure. Watching the scene, she just lets out a long, tired sigh. He then realizes his path won't be easy, and wonders how to use the item. 8 hours before the fight, a new scene unfolds in a garden. Distracted, he seems to notice something approaching him at that exact moment. He then says he feels like someone is coming to the location. Damduck then appears, walking slowly toward him through the flowery garden. Surprised, he turns around and asks what his brother is doing there. Praising his appearance, he comments on the beautiful preparation work for the event. He then asks what brings him there, and Damduck says he has a request. With a serious expression, he asks for help making the mangaCaped. The story of the weapon is revealed, showing that not even the immortals can overcome it. With the intervention of the immortals diminishing, a new threat rises from the seas. The dragon kings of the 3 seas caused a disaster, encouraging human sacrifices. In response, the monarchs of the 3 kingdoms united to combat the threat. With this union, they completed the weapon called mangaCaped, the dragon's rival. The weapon was so strong it needed 2 restrictions to be completed. He explains that the weapon was left in Scylla to face the Dragon King, so he concludes that's why he wants to make a new weapon. He says he sought him out because, as Lord of the Garden, he would recognize the materials. With the garden's security diminished, they'll enter to collect the jade bamboo. The only problem is that Lady Yuwa might suspect how they obtained the bamboo. This would also cause a conflict with the Dragon Palace forces in the future. And in the end, his brother Damduck would have to take full responsibility for everything. The reason for all this is the protest they saw against the sacrifices. He remembers his anger upon learning that the country's leader allowed this. Observing his brother, he thinks about how different he is from the other immortals. With a smile, he says that of course, he'll help him on his mission. Being from the human world, he says he's moved that someone like him exists. He continues, saying it would be a sin if he didn't lend his strength to help. Smiling, Damduck says he knew he would think that way about the situation. Happy, he hugs him and says he's truly a good friend. With a smile, he reflects on the place with bamboo for the weapon. They then decide to begin the mission, with Hanyul thinking about his preparations. He then uses a technique, making a quick movement with his feet on the ground. Amazed, he and his brother observe the landscape that appears before them. He comments that the island is floating, completely surprised by what he sees. Damduck explains that the pavilion is part of the space and can be accessed. Realizing the difficulty, Hanyul comments that the mission won't be easy at all. Calling for Karmi, he summons a small horse statue in his hands. A large black horse then emerges from the statue, surprising Hanyul with its appearance. Extending his hand, he invites him to mount the horse and begin the journey. Damduck then appears with armor, ready for the mission that awaits them. Mounted on the horse, the two begin to ride across the waters of that place. Damduck tells him to trust, because nothing bad will happen to them there. Frightened, Hanyul looks at the water and sees something approaching them rapidly. Several sea monsters emerge from the water, surrounding the two riders there in the middle. Shouting, he guides the horse to advance amid the chaos of battle. The horse then leaps over the monsters, dodging all the attacks. Arriving on the island, Hanyul says he can't enter because of the intruders. Turning around, Damduck simply tells him to trust him one more time. After the leap, Hanyul lands safely in the forest of the floating island. He then realizes that there are also intruders there, hiding in the shadows. Using the mandrake, he says he needs to finish while his brother protects him. The longer and more meaningful the phrase, the stronger the power becomes. Using his power, he moves quickly to dodge the enemy attacks. With a swift strike, he hits the foot of one of the monsters in the forest. He then senses an unusual energy coming from two different places on the island. Advancing, he hopes the first place has the jade bamboo they're looking for. Startled, he turns around upon sensing a presence approaching him rapidly. A lizard-shaped monster advances, attacking him with a quick strike. Dodging the attack, he leaps backward and prepares for combat. Analyzing the enemy, he realizes he's at a great disadvantage in the battle. The monster and its serpents prepare to attack with all their might. Holding his weapon, he prepares to use the power of the fan he received. He decides to use the fan, since it will be difficult to fight with his other abilities. The creatures then advance, running in his direction for a mass attack. Opening the fan, he prepares to invoke the power sealed within. With a command, he summons a large bamboo wall to protect himself. One of the creatures is hit directly by the wall, being thrown backward. Hanyul then summons a huge fire guanak to attack the bamboo wall. Gritting his teeth, the guanak prepares to fight against the lizard monsters. With a powerful roar, the guanak advances to attack with its claws. The monsters attack, but the fire guanak defends them with its claws. The lizards join the guanak, preparing for a combined attack in the forest. With a roar, the guanak charges forward, ignoring the wall and heading straight for him. Now, as its master, he realizes he's enjoying using the fan way too much. He understands why the guanak is called the spirit of the fire mountain. The story of the mountain is told, and how it transformed into a volcano. To control the fire, they suppressed the mountain's energy for hundreds of years. Surprised, he sees the creatures fleeing and asks why they're running. The monsters flee, leaving him behind with the giant fire guanak. He realizes it's strange for the monsters to run toward the place with strong energy. He also notices that the jade bamboo consumes many nutrients, but the plants grow well. Reflecting on the situation, he seems to have an idea of what's happening. He then finds a giant turtle with several hatchlings and scriptures on its shell. Watching from afar, he spots the jade bamboo on top of a tree. A large rock emanates a mysterious energy, drawing everyone's attention there. Suddenly, he senses a strange presence coming from inside that rock. He then feels that something powerful is hidden within that large rock. Guanak asks him to send him there, and he questions the decision. He says he doesn't care what's there because he's going to roast everything. With the fan in hand, he prepares to attack alongside his companion. The guanak advances, attacking the small creatures with its fire claws. Laughing, he says those bastards are way too easy to defeat. But suddenly, he senses a new threat approaching him rapidly. A blue energy emerges, and he realizes it's something very powerful. Bright yellow eyes appear in the darkness, staring at the fire guanak. A water jet strikes the guanak, who screams in pain from the blow. Desperate, the guanak cries out for Hanyul, begging him to help. The guanak is trapped by water vines, and Hanyul observes from afar. He then says the guanak must be the one cultivating the island. Screaming, the guanak is shocked to realize the Heitai was there all along. Inside the cave, they find a blue creature bound in vines. He then asks if that's really a Heitai, and the guanak confirms. Hanyul wonders how big the creature can get, finding it disgusting. Guanak gets irritated, saying that because of him, his energy was sealed. Hanyul says the Heitai is at most 200 years old, being quite young. He also realizes the creature hasn't learned even the basics of training. With a smile, he grabs his fan, having an idea of what to do. Startled, Guanak realizes his intentions and tells him not to do that. Ignoring the guanak, he promises more honey and prepares to use the fan. Screaming, the creature is sucked into the fan with a whirlwind. A new mark appears on the fan, showing the image of the sealed creature. After being sealed, the Haiti seems to be sleeping peacefully in a calm place. Then, a guanak appears and is startled to see the creature sleeping there. The Haiti advances, scaring the guanak, who screams in fear at the attack. With a smile, he says the fan suits the new creature well. He then prepares to get what he needs and return home. He then finds several bamboo shoots, ready to be harvested in the forest. Back, he steps on solid ground, returning from the floating island. Thanking for the help, the two celebrate the success of their mission. He then notices his brother seems to be panting and tired from the battle. With his hand on his belly, Damdok reveals a wound with blood dripping. Hanyul worries, but he says he'll recover when he rests a bit. But Hanyul reminds him there isn't much time until the celestial battle begins. Handing over a glowing sphere, he tells his brother to take that item. He says that's the price he deserves for fulfilling the request. He explains there were twin dragons guarding the garden, and he wanted both. But he only managed to get one of the Kintamani orbs to give him. Hanyul falls silent, just watching the glowing sphere in his hands. He says that's a fair price for the work, but Hanyul refuses. He knows his brother will have to pay a high price for the weapon. Lady Yuhua will be furious, and his brother will have to bear the consequences. With a sigh, he prepares to help his injured brother walk. Placing his arm over his shoulder, he tells him to lean on him. He says refusing help to protect pride isn't something a man would do. Damdok says he'd be happy if he called him older brother. With a smile, Hanyul laughs at the situation and the interaction between them both. He then reflects on how strong his brother is, as immortal and human. Embracing him, he promises he'll become strong to call him brother proudly. Carriages arrive at the location, bringing spectators for the grand celestial battle. The narrator announces they are on Dokdo Island, where the match will take place soon. Before the fight, the sages from each side line up, displaying their imposing presence. The opposing team also prepares, with an aura of confidence and power. The match rules are explained where the winner faces the next team, but there are concerns that fighting continuously could be a disadvantage. Hanyul observes that outwardly, his brother doesn't appear to be gravely injured. Before the match, the sages from each country send prayer rituals to the Dragon King. A woman reads the scroll, requesting consent for the fight on his territory. In exchange, sacrifices are offered to symbolize unity and respect. With the sword in hand, she begins the process of containing the sea for the battle. With one movement, she uses her power to calm the waters of the location. A massive ice wall rises, separating the arena from the rest of the sea. The space between the two islands is raised, creating the arena for combat. The narrator is impressed, commenting on the incredible power of a sage. Foreign observers appear, showing up to evaluate the fight fairly and impartially. It's reported that high-ranking sages were invited to fulfill the conditions. In Shiva's name, he promises to make a fair judgment with all honors. Until the winner is decided, he swears to protect Lady Yua's treasure. Representing Odin, he also promises a fair judgment with all honors at stake. He swears to protect the blade of the seven-branched sword until the fight's end. Surprised, he feels a resonance coming from within his body. He realizes the sheath is responding to the seven-branched sword. The sword then exits the box, glowing with an intense blue light. The sword's power reacts, surprising Odin's representative at the location. The sword then transforms, revealing its true and powerful form. A new light shines, showing the sword complete and restored with its power. Everyone is shocked to see the transformation of the legendary seven-branched sword. With the sword in hand, the representative prepares for the battle to come. Apologizing, he says the sword can be a bit wild sometimes. He can't believe the sword is responding like this even without having an owner. Setting the sword aside, he apologizes for interrupting the event. The woman says that since the sword is so powerful, it's normal for it to show spirit. Hanyul is shocked to hear the title, Master of the Sword Shattering. He recognizes the person as the legendary weapon breaker, a powerful warrior. The man is Beowulf, one of Valhalla's sages with incomparable strength. He then realizes that's why the sword finally went quiet. If not for Beowulf's intervention, the sword's sheath would have flown away, and if that had happened, he would have been caught red-handed as the sheath's owner. Lady Yua then calls for Li Yung, ordering him to go out first for the fight. Li Yung then walks to the arena, preparing for the first combat. The first celestial battle is about to begin, with the two fighters facing each other. Hanyul watches him, hoping Li Yung will be strong in his fight. A man says it's a shame, leaving Hanyul confused by the comment. With a smile, she asks if he doesn't think the same as her. He recognizes her as Go Hyunhwa, a sage he saw at a competition. She tells him to see and feel for himself, as she doesn't like explaining. He then perceives the opponent's power, identifying him as Kamaitachi. The fighter summons several creatures which prepare to attack his opponent. The creatures then advance, running at high speed for a combined attack. Li Yung prepares to defend against the attack coming his direction. With a movement of his weapon, he creates a shield to block the creatures. Jumping in the air, he spins his spear and attacks the creatures with one strike. Shouting, he unleashes another strike, showing his skill in battle. He then hits his opponent squarely with the tip of his spear. With the blow, his opponent feels the impact, and one of his items glows. Shocked, Li Yung sees several creatures emerging from behind his opponent. Being hit, Li Yung screams in pain and blood spurts upward. Hanyul realizes the Japanese sage's power increased instantly because of an ability. She then asks if he finally understood the situation they find themselves in. She explains that the opponent's master returned and passed his abilities to him. Even if he hadn't taken care of Li Yung, Chawul would be next. The crowd of reporters and photographers watches the entire fight attentively. The match is a test of skills between the Korean and Japanese sages, but the true purpose is to show the royalty, the dignity of the Go family. She wanted to show the strength of the family that defeated the Japanese sages on the island. Reflecting on the fight, he realizes Li Yung hasn't given up yet. Leaning on his spear, he stands up, even wounded, to continue the battle. The narrator says the attack nearly brought down Sage Li Yung, but he holds on. His condition looks really bad, with the excessive bleeding being the biggest problem. With a determined look, he prepares to continue the fight, even wounded. The creatures advance, and the narrator wonders if he'll be defeated in the first match. Gritting his teeth, he refuses to accept defeat and prepares to attack. Screaming that he can't lose, he leaps into the air for one last desperate strike, but his opponent stares him down, saying they'll still see who's going to win this fight. The opponent advances, with his creatures attacking Li Yung with multiple swift blows. Screaming in pain, he's hit square on by the enemy creature's attack, attacks. Blood gushes from his wounds, and he staggers backward from the blows. Kneeling on the ground, he tries to support himself on his spear without strength to continue. With his body trembling, he struggles to stay on his feet, but the pain is too much. He then collapses to the ground, defeated and unable to move anymore. The first match ends, and the master from Japan takes the victory. Shouting, they call for medicine to be brought quickly to help the wounded. Hanyul observes the scene with a serious and focused expression on her face. She says they should be grateful, as he created a stage for them to shine brighter. With a smile, she reminds him that'll only happen if he manages to win. She advises him to try to look more dynamic when he loses, to stand out. With a subtle smile, he seems to have a response to her comment. He then says that even if he gives his best, he won't stand out if he loses. With a determined look, he responds that then he just needs to win the fight. She stares at him, with a serious and focused expression suddenly on her face. The next fighter is announced, and Sage Park Hanyul walks into the arena. The narrator wonders what kind of match he'll show the audience. The opponent stares at him, calling him a fool for entering the arena to fight. He then asks if Hanyul saw the power he used in the last fight. The creatures then appear, surrounding the opponent in a display of power. Hanyul advances, delivering a powerful blow against his opponent in the arena. His strike lands square on, throwing his opponent far away with the force. Everyone is shocked by the speed and power of the blow he delivered. The audience wonders what just happened, surprised by the quick victory. With the opponent on the ground, he wins the fight with his spatial folding technique. He feels relieved for not passing out like Sage Lee Young in the fight. Jachambi calls him crazy for advancing without any defense against the opponent. She continues, questioning if he doesn't value his life and what kind of honor is that. Angrily, she asks if he'd throw himself like that impatient guy did in the fight. She still complains, asking what's so great about a guy who wants to die. Observing the scene, Damdok seems to have a different opinion about his attitude. He says his action only shows how fearless Master Hanyul is. A notification appears, showing he consumed a new drug for the battle. The drug's effects vitalize his cells and increase his blood production. He comments that the iron and folic acid relieve the bleeding he had. The narrator wonders how far Sage Park Hanyul will manage to go in the competition. With a serious look, he faces his opponent, ready for the next battle. The opponent seems to feel the pressure, but prepares for the fight to come. Grabbing her talismans, she prepares to use her summoning abilities. She warns that she won't be an easy opponent to defeat in the arena. Summoning her dolls, two large samurai appear to protect her in battle. Hanyul observes that she created a defense for close combat with the dolls. With a clenched fist, he prepares to use a new attack strategy. He then uses his power, surprising the opponent and her dolls in the arena. She wonders if he'll use the same method, believing he only has one trick. With a quick strike, he attacks, but the opponent doesn't seem shaken. Surprised, she realizes something unexpected happened, changing the course of the fight. Two wooden creatures emerge, attacking and destroying her samurai dolls. Shocked, she can't believe he managed to destroy her precious dolls. With a smile, he asks if they should finish the fight in a Korean way. He then says they'll begin a Hunminjeongeum ceremony right there in the arena. With a serious look, he announces that the war song will start now. With a confident pose, he prepares to sing and use his special power. He sings about fear and pain, facing them until the last moment of battle. The audience wonders if that's the last 15 minutes song. He sings that if they retreat, all that will remain is defeat and pain. The wooden creatures prepare themselves, with the country's fate in their determination. They then advance, attacking the opponent with powerful blows and war cries. Desperate, she screams for them to stop, but the attack continues relentless. The creatures hold her, and she realizes that if she gives up, everything will crumble. In the final moments, with the country at stake, she faces her opponent. With a confident smile, he watches her, ready for the battle's conclusion. The narrator can't believe what he's seeing, shocked by the outcome of the fight. The Sage Park Hanyul scores 2 victories in the blink of an eye, surprising everyone. He realizes that in each fight, he used only one move to win. This way, his next opponent won't be able to measure his true divine power. He knows that today's match is just a show for Lady Yua's family. He understands he's just playing a sacrificial role, just like Lee Young. But he doesn't plan to put on a show like that, having other plans in mind. He plans to become the main character of that grand display of power. With 2 opponents defeated, a new challenger emerges for the next fight. The reporter is surprised by the opponent's clothing, identifying him as a shinobi. He wonders how a shinobi could be involved in the shrine's affairs. The opponent exudes powerful energy, showing a huge difference in level. Hanyul realizes that from now on, the fight will be on a much higher level. With a focused look, he prepares to face the new and powerful opponent. The wooden creatures defend Hanyul, but are easily destroyed by the shinobi's strikes. The shinobi then summons his own weapons, 2 bright and powerful kunai. With a strike of his kunai, the shinobi attacks him with full force. Being thrown back, he feels the impact of the powerful blow he received. The shinobi then launches several kunai, attacking him with a rain of blades. The kunai transform into large blades, embedding themselves in the arena floor. One of the blades glows, preparing for a new attack against him. Screaming in pain, he's struck head-on by the blade's explosion. The shinobi advances, seizing the opportunity to attack once more. Fallen on the ground, he watches his opponent approach for the final blow. He then begins a Hunminjeongeum ceremony, using his special power. Screaming, he uses his power to create an energy wave and fly away. The shinobi advances, preparing to intercept his flight with a quick strike. Hanyul comments he was almost cut in half, and decides to use another method. Calling out to his senior, he invokes the power of Gwanak. Gwanak emerges, roaring and facing the shinobi in the arena. Gwanak shouts angrily, advancing to attack the shinobi with his claws. Laughing at the scene, he enjoys the interaction between the creatures in the arena. Gwanak asks why he looks injured, and Hanyul confirms he was hit. He then recognizes the pattern on the shinobi's clothing, identifying him as a spy. Gwanak says he'll defeat the opponent, not caring about his level. He continues, saying the shinobi's armor is weak against fire. With an attack, the shinobi's armor begins to melt from the heat. Hanyul grows anxious, watching the battle unfold in an unexpected way. A weapon is thrown, hitting the shinobi and making him retreat in the arena. The two face each other, with Gwanak preparing for the final blow. The shinobi's armor melts completely, revealing his true form underneath. Gwanak says it's boring to win so early, preparing for the attack. With a roar, he advances to end the fight with a powerful blow, but Hanyul shouts, asking him to stop the attack immediately. The shinobi transforms into a puddle of slime, revealing his true identity. Being attacked by surprise, Gwanak finds himself in a tricky situation. He shouts that the bastard trapped him with a strange ability. Recognizing the technique, he's amazed the opponent uses such power. Seeing the gold melting, he gets irritated for remaining trapped there. Then he says it's easy to talk, since he doesn't have cold energy. Suddenly, he realizes something and is surprised. When they warn that cold energy is coming, he looks back. Feeling that presence, he questions this familiar sensation. Terrified, he recognizes whose power is rapidly approaching. Arriving with everything, a small water creature appears in the middle of the chaos. He then questions why that shorty of all people showed up to interfere. Being drowned, he screams desperately, asking for someone to save him from there. Impressed, a reporter points to the sky, telling the cameraman to look. Everyone observes the Taeguk technique drawn in the skies of Dokdo Island. Confused by the situation, he asks what kind of nonsense this Taeguk thing is. Supporting his hand on the ground, he struggles to manage to stand up. While the small being floats, his opponent runs far away from there. Keeping focus on the enemy, he prepares for the next move. Observing the scene, they comment he seems to want to continue even while worn out. But to everyone's surprise, he says he gives up the fight. Not understanding anything, he asks what they're doing just standing there. Falling silent, Isonokami just watches him with a serious expression. She then explains that this is a match for a peaceful agreement, saying they don't need to risk the lives of two young sages. Just listening to everything, he remains serious and silent. Irritated with the situation, his companion curses the opponent, calling him a bastard. They then explain that he can't die because he's not from the sanctuary. With a clenched fist, he seems to have made some kind of agreement. She reveals that he's a talent borrowed from the Saikashu group. Responding directly, he says the sanctuary leader shames him. Turning to the others, he concedes the match out of mercy from the leader. At that, another woman announces they're also giving up, thinking of their young ones. Caught by surprise, he's left without a reaction to that sudden decision. They then congratulate him for managing to survive the 3 battles. With a smile, she says she didn't know he had such talents. Hearing the compliment shouted for everyone, he reacts with a smile. Ending the conversation, he says he would have put on a better show if he'd known. Confused, she asks what he's talking about at that moment. He then questions if she was worried about him getting attention alone. Arguing, he says he'd understand fools better since he's from the world. Turning around, he and the group begin to walk away from the place. Watching everything, the shinobi clenches his fist with great force. As he walks, he comments that he also feels bad for the opposing shinobi. Back with his group, he stands face to face with his companion. Already seated, she congratulates him, saying he did a good job. She laments the situation, but he says it's all right. At that, she corrects herself, saying she was referring to the opponent and not him. Changing scenes, a woman explains how he would fight well with his abilities. It would be better to show his effort, even if the result was defeat. Comparing it to soccer, they say the audience won't root for her. Then she realizes that he also knows the term they mentioned. He swears he doesn't watch that, but she responds that she respects him. While they wait, the next Korean sage is finally announced now. Suddenly the whole place shakes, scaring the reporters there at the location. Before them, a massive wave of water begins to form rapidly. Amid the chaos, Everyone screams that it's a tsunami and runs desperately. Trying to escape, the group of people flees from the giant wave approaching. Emerging from the water, a man asks where the rebels who challenged the palace are. Questioning the situation, she wonders why they're appearing there. Answering her, he explains that they're the Dragon King's sons. With great anger, he shouts that he won't listen to any excuses from them. Then he accuses that their true intention is to trade treasures to escape. Confused by the conversation, they wonder what the man is talking about. Giving an order, he commands them to hand over the sword that was bet. Showing himself generous, he says the king will forgive if they apologize. At that, two masked figures appear prepared for the combat to come. Raising his weapon, one of them asks if that was the real intention. Accepting the challenge, he prepares for the battle that will come soon. Launching a strike, he attacks the group of enemies falling from the sky. Screaming with fury, he says he'll throw them all into the sea without mercy. His powerful strike advances toward everyone who was falling there. Being hit, a man screams desperately in the middle of the strong current. Other people are also dragged by the water, screaming for help. He questions what's happening and takes the chance to look for Beowulf. Suddenly he notices something strange approaching him from behind. One of the Dragon King's men warns that he found what he was looking for. He then reveals that he found the seven-branched sword in the water. He prepares, because if the sheath resonates, he can recover the sword. At that, a giant creature suddenly appears right in front of him. Meanwhile, the strikes continue throwing people in all directions. Noticing the situation, he observes that the sword is still resonating. Holding the item, he confirms that the resonance has finally begun in full force. Concentrating all his energy, he commands the sword to come to him. After the resonance, he finally manages to wield his powerful weapon. With a smile on his face, he celebrates, saying he achieved the feat. Floating above the water, he raises the sword to celebrate his conquest. But suddenly, he's startled by something that surprises him. Falling hard, he sinks rapidly into the water. Sinking rapidly, he grips the sword with all his available strength. He then complains that he was thrown into the water by the sword's power. Impressed, he says that this is the most powerful energy he's ever seen. Holding the weapon, he wonders if this is the golden energy. He then realizes that the sword is absorbing all of his power. With difficulty, he complains that the intensity of the power is too great. Worried, he warns that his body won't be able to endure for much longer. To survive, he needs to release the sword's power as quickly as possible. Suddenly, he notices something strange appearing in front of him. He's startled by the spatial rift that appeared when he swung the sword. Starting to be pulled in, he screams desperately that he's being sucked in. Screaming in pain, he's dragged into that mysterious rift. Up in the sky, a strange grid of light begins to manifest. It then expands, forming a large sphere of light in the sky. Being sucked in with everything, he's thrown out of the dimensional rift. With the impact of the fall, he hits the ground with full force. Feeling a lot of pain, he struggles to get up from there. Totally confused, he begins to wonder where he ended up. Looking at the sky, he sees a dark and strange portal floating. He then wonders if that space was created by his sword. Remembering the past, he compares the place to another dimension he visited. Then he thinks if he can return home by swinging the sword. But before trying, he turns around when he senses a presence nearby. Taking a surprise blow, he's thrown far with the strong impact. With the force of the attack, he's injured and ends up spitting blood. Fallen on the ground, he sees a person standing right in front of him. Badly hurt, he tries to recognize who that person who attacked him is. Observing the man, he realizes that he already knows him. Then he notices that this person is the shinobi he faced. Imagining the reason, he wonders if the shinobi followed him out of anger. Taking another blow, he hears the shinobi talk about tools. With a smile, the shinobi says he'll let him choose the tool. Mocking, he simply responds that he can't understand the Japanese language. Then the shinobi warns that he'll make the choice himself. Noticing a chance, he moves his eyes quickly to the side. Fallen on the ground, he uses his ability to create a plant. Seeing the trick, the shinobi stops him and says that wouldn't work. Taking the plant, the shinobi comments that he'll eat it with pleasure. Just watching the scene, he gives a smirk. He then provokes him, saying that's not something to eat. Ignoring the warning, the shinobi eats a strange item that appeared there. Suddenly, the plant begins to react in a strange way. Feeling the effect, she screams desperately while her body writhes. He warns that one should be careful with things seen for the first time. Feeling a lot of pain, he ends up spitting more blood because of the wounds. Without more strength to continue, he finally collapses and falls to the ground. He then says he dealt with the shinobi, but now he can't move. Looking for a solution, he searches in his bag for something he can use. Then, a dark energy emerges, and a mysterious figure appears suddenly. Coming out of the portal, a person curses at the warrior lying on the ground. Running in his direction, the newcomer asks why he's always in bad shape. He says his friend will be fine if he uses the herb and a technique. Seeing the truth on his face, he asks his sunbae to be honest. Lying down and badly injured, he prepares to explain the real situation. Analyzing the wound, he warns that the lower core is severely damaged. He understands that not only his energy, but his life force will run out. Suggesting a solution, he's interrupted by his friend who shouts, saying no. Irritated, he shouts that he already warned that's not something he can handle. He mentions the magic pearl that his friend obtained from the powerful Damdok, being useful only for divine levels. The pearl's energy is still accumulating. With the dragon's will, it will become an object of good and evil. Then he questions if someone so young will be able to handle so much power. Besides, he reminds him that Damdok didn't give the pearl for him to eat. With a steady hand, he seems to have made a decision about what to do. Apologizing, he activates some kind of power that surprises his friend. With great anger, he shouts, asking if he was summoned with the pearl. Calling his friend an idiot, a very strong light takes over the place. The scene shifts. She orders everyone to leave the area immediately. Startled by the command, the servants call out to her, unsure what to do. With a swift movement, her hand shoots toward the table. Flipping it over, she hurls the food tray to the floor with great force. Screaming furiously, she repeats the order for everyone to get out now. After the outburst, she sits alone while the others just watch. Gripping her dress, she says she'll tear them apart and kill them all. She then curses them, saying they're people who know nothing. She concludes they must have gone mad because of her power. Seething with rage, she declares that the Eastern Sea is her territory. Complaining, she says they didn't appreciate her enormous kindness. Meanwhile, the Dragon King's son accuses them of wanting to steal treasures. Reflecting, she thinks the Dragon King wouldn't ruin the fight with lies. Looking out the window, she appears very thoughtful about the whole situation. She then wonders how that old demonic serpent heard such a thing. Either way, she seems to have a plan in mind for the future. She then reflects on how Go Hyunhwa tried to create a hero. Even though the plan to be worshipped failed, it wasn't in vain. Now she simply decides she'll wait and see what happens. With a serious look, she vows to make everyone in the Eastern Sea bow down. The scene shifts. He wakes up complaining of a headache from sleeping. Feeling his energy flowing well, he believes his core is recovering. Running his hand over his head, he's startled when he touches something strange. Completely confused, he wonders what this thing that appeared on him is. Terrified by the horns, he notices his senses are much sharper. Analyzing the situation, he believes not much time has passed since then. Looking at his hands, he realizes his body is clean and cared for. Seeing the place in his clothes, he concludes someone has been taking care of him. He then begins to wonder if it was his sunbae Gwanak. Remembering everything, he freed his friend so he could return to his home. Worried about his sunbae, he runs toward the door of the house. Leaving there, he desperately shouts for his friend who isn't there. But when he looks outside, he's completely shocked by the scene. Seeing the forest, he wonders how the place changed so much suddenly. Reflecting on the plants, he questions how much time has already passed. Suddenly, he seems to notice something very strange in the surrounding air. Nearby, a location is completely destroyed and covered with ash. Looking at the ground, he notices the earth is all dry and cracked. He then wonders what the hell happened in that desolate place. Analyzing the traces, he suspects his sunbae fought against someone. Not knowing where he is, he smells something burning in the air. Then he hears a noise and shouts asking who's in the forest. Seeing someone fleeing, he tells the person to stop and runs after them. While pursuing the figure, he seems to notice something strange on the path ahead. Continuing the chase, he wonders what that barrier up ahead is. Running through the forest, he comes across a mysterious shrine on the path. He then wonders if that's where his sunbae Gwanak is. Suddenly, a giant paw smashes the shrine's roof completely. Emerging from the water, a huge blue creature appears with a fierce look. Surprised, he recognizes the Heite and comments that it's grown quite a bit. Running toward it, he asks why the Heite is so cautious. Pointing to his head, he questions if it's because of the horns. Then the creature rapidly advances in his direction with great speed. With a roar, the creature prepares to land a blow on him. Surrounded by the paws, he remains still while facing the great blue beast. With a smile, he uses his abilities to protect himself from the attack. Advancing, the Haiti attacks with its sharp claws at the same spot. After the strike, the animal is confused about what just happened. Then a voice says it shouldn't bite its true master. Frightened, the small Haiti trembles with fear upon seeing the other creature. Afraid, the Haiti shrinks back and lies on the ground, surrendering. He then explains the Haiti will obey if you show your strength. After calming down, he says his energy didn't change after becoming a dragon. He then notices his fan, and his things are stored nearby. Seeing everything organized, he thanks his sunbae for taking care of everything. Looking for something useful, he picks up a small pouch that was with them. Then he finds a strange item he didn't remember having. Opening the scroll, he wonders if he had that before. Reading the contents, he realizes it's the shinobi's secret scroll. Remembering what his sunbae said, he notices notices the Suzuki clan symbol. He then discovers that the scroll is the Book of Yatagarasu. Continuing to look at the items, he finds something else there. It was the clothes that belonged to the shinobi he had defeated before. Thinking it could turn into metal, he decides he'll use that outfit. But suddenly, a strange noise draws his attention to the forest. Startled by the sound, he wonders what that was he heard. Then he remembers it's the direction where he saw traces of the fight. Running to the location, he uses his ability to leap between the trees. Getting closer, he sees two strange men standing near the barrier. With great force, one of them lands a blow trying to break everything. Hidden, he wonders why they're trying to break the barrier. Observing the men, he notices the blue skin and very different fur. Then he notices the weapon one of them is holding at that moment. He recognizes it similar to the club his Sunbei gave him. Recognizing the men, he wonders if they're actually real goblins. He then thinks that this might be the goblins' secret base. He also wonders if they attacked him because he invaded their territory. With another blow, the barrier begins to crack and is about to break. Knowing he needs to stop them, he prepares for the battle to come. Suddenly, he has an idea of how he'll solve the situation there. Appearing in front of them, the goblins are startled by his sudden arrival. Confused by his presence, one of them asks who he really is. With an air of confidence, he introduces himself as Park Hanyul. Asking for the leader, one of the goblins points in his direction. Then, a figure approaches walking slowly toward all of them. Introducing himself to the group, the goblin says his name is Maltuk. He then asks where the owner of the sword from that place is. The goblin explains that only the sword's owner can reach that place. Refusing to answer, he says he can't hand over the sword's owner. Thinking a bit, the goblin leader decides to tell the reason for his search. He then explains they need to find the sword's owner to punish him. Remembering the promise, he says no one showed up for their challenge. He warns that the sword's owner already entered, but that he lost it. Very angry, the goblin shouts that their former chief got sick. For this reason, he states that the sword's owner needs to be punished. Then he orders them to take him to the tribe chief immediately. Analyzing the situation, he decides to change the subject and ask a question. He then asks if by any chance they saw a fire bear around there. The goblin reveals they trapped the bear in a bottle for not obeying. Very angry, he's shocked to learn they imprisoned his Sunbei. Calming down, he realizes now he just needs to rescue him from that place. Pretending to be the owner, he hears that it seems he'd be crushed easily. Shocked by the insult, he's left speechless at being underestimated like that. The goblins then humiliate him, saying they'll check if he's a man. Very angry, he calls the goblins idiots for underestimating him so much. Irritated, the leader says if he doesn't open the barrier, he should disappear. Wielding the fan, he warns those punks not to underestimate him like that. With Haitai's help, he prepares to attack all the goblins. He then orders the creature to spit something in their direction. With full cheeks, Haiti prepares to obey the order. Receiving the blow, the goblin leader's arm is completely covered by something. Surprised, he wonders what that thing is that hit him. Then, the goblins are startled seeing what's happening to them. Hayate starts shooting bean porridge at the goblins. Terrified, the other goblins scream in fear seeing the scene there. With a quick movement, the creature spits bean porridge on all the other goblins too. In the midst of tragedy, the goblins beg for their lives. With the fan in hand, he threatens to give them a porridge bath. Screaming in fear, the goblins are terrified by the terrible threat. Kneeling, the goblin begs him not to throw more bean porridge. Sitting down, he asks if the goblin tribe chief is strong. He wonders how they managed to overcome his Sunbei so easily. Pressing for more information, he discovers the goblins have a treasure. Curious, he asks what power that treasure possesses. Then, a mysterious voice says he doesn't need to know the answer. Suddenly, fire energy surges from the ground with great intensity. Startled, the goblin warns that the chief is arriving at the location. With an irritated look, the chief calls the goblins useless idiots. Screaming in rage, he questions how it was possible to lose in such an idiotic way. He then declares that all of them must rot inside the bottle for 10 years. Now holding the gourd, he observes the battlefield with attention. Surprised by what he sees, he wonders if that is the Jagamgam Horo gourd. Thinking about testing the chief's abilities, he decides to see how she'll react to the porridge. Just then, a shadowy creature rushes quickly in his direction to strike a blow. With a swift movement, she manages to dodge the attack with great ease. She then warns that the attack was obvious, and his tactics won't work on her. Using her ability, she begins to summon several ghosts onto the battlefield. Seeing the scene, he questions that completely absurd power coming from her. Realizing she's a powerful enemy, he decides it's better to defeat her immediately. Meanwhile, Hanyul simply watches the situation unfold with attention. Emerging from the water, Hayate prepares to enter the combat. After the attack command, both sides finally advance for the direct confrontation. During the battle, the warriors exchange several blows as they advance across the battlefield. With her summoned warriors, she observes the progress of the battle against the blue creature. Commenting on the situation, she says all of this is really impressive to watch. She then shouts, saying it's been a while since she felt this excited. Preparing for the fight, she positions herself to deliver her next strikes. He just observes the entire situation with a surprised expression on his face. Changing scenes, he questions how goblins create things with just a club. Soon after, it's explained that the clubs have the ability to incorporate imagination. However, it's said that goblins don't think and move only by instinct. Finishing the explanation, it's said the world would be theirs if they had intellect. Back to the fight, her imagination proves to be on a completely different level. Analyzing the confrontation, he begins to realize this chief might be different. Even against the porridge, she continues handling the situation and the creature well. He then thinks whether he should use the black warrior from the northern barrier. Surprised, he suddenly shouts, asking what she's doing at that moment. Advancing in an instant, she lands a powerful blow directly against Hanyul. Taunting Hanyul, she says he still seems to have time for other things. Gripping his weapon firmly, he prepares for the next combat move. Just then, a creature with a mask suddenly appears in front of her to attack. Dodging the creature's blow, she manages to throw her opponent far away from there. Shouting to attack, she orders all her warriors to advance at once. Then the ghosts she summons surround Hanyul, who's now on the ground. Using the club, he tries to defend himself from the multiple blows coming his way. To protect himself, a barrier forms around him at the last second. Now protected by the barrier, he breathes with difficulty, visibly tired from the confrontation. Looking down at him, she asks if he's already reached his limit. She then suggests they finish this, ordering him to scream and beg for his life. Receiving the ghost's attack, the barrier begins to be pressured more and more. Holding the gourd, she warns he'll be trapped as soon as he screams like the bear. Insisting on her order, she tells him to scream, leaving him completely cornered. But with a smile, he questions what in the world is so fun about this. Suddenly, several creatures with pots in their hands emerge from the ground surrounding Hanyul. The pots they carry are filled with the same type of porridge. Confused by the turn of events, she runs across the field without understanding the situation. Just then, a shadowy creature advances with a powerful strike in her direction. Screaming loudly, she faces the creature that completely surprised her from behind. The gourd that was once hers begins to move in a strange way. Floating, the gourd begins to suck all the creatures back inside it. With the item out of her reach, she falls to the ground, completely defeated. He then explains that's why she wanted him to scream. Holding the gourd, he says she's getting a taste of her own medicine. Tapping the object, he calls for Sunbei to come out of the gourd. Coming out of the gourd, the creature shouts that it knew he would save it. Complaining, he says it was divine punishment, and that it acted like a guard dog. He then asks if Sunbai knows how much time passed, receiving the answer of 150 days. Saying it's better to leave, he also tells the other people to come out of the gourd. Coming out of the gourd, they all fall to the ground, completely exhausted from the time they spent trapped. Approaching her, he asks where the 7-branch sword he's looking for is. Still on the ground, she just lifts her face and stares at him with great attention. He then gets irritated, saying he's not short, and questions why she cares. Sitting on the ground, she agrees he's right, and that it's not important. Remembering something, she comments that her mother said something she thought was ridiculous. Even so, she continues the conversation, saying he won the fight against her. Praising his strength, she suddenly asks him to marry her without hesitation. Hearing the request, he's left without reaction and just questions what she said. The creature then thinks whether it will have to officialize the marriage if he accepts the proposal. Asking what she's talking about, he tries to understand the marriage proposal. The creature then questions if he hasn't heard about the goblin's connection to the sword. Remembering the story, it's said that a king promised them a worthy man. However, it's revealed that, despite the ancient promise, no one ever showed up at the location. Connecting the dots, he realizes the conclusion of the story is his marriage. Completely shocked by the revelation, he wonders if she's really going to marry him. Shouting that this has nothing to do with it, he says the marriage was for someone else. The creature then comments that despite this, she doesn't seem to agree with him. Trying to control himself, he tells himself to pull it together and focus on what matters. Threatening the creature, he orders her to tell him where she hid the 7-branch sword. Grabbing him, she warns she'll make him eat porridge until his stomach bursts. Forcing him to eat, she demands he tell her where the sword he's looking looking for is. Even with the spoon in his mouth, he refuses to give her the information. Screaming loudly, she says she won't hand over the sword until she has 3 children. With a signal, he tells the creature to proceed, leaving the woman frightened by the scene. The creature warns that this method probably won't work with the girl passed out. Observing the scene, he comments that goblins are known for being quite stubborn. Then the creature asks why he doesn't just get married, leaving him irritated. He realizes the goblins are trapped, with only the youngest ones remaining around. Thinking about the tribe, he notes that the gourd is a high-grade treasure. Suggesting a future, the creature says the tribe could become very strong. Noticing something important, his eyes widen at the new possibility that arose. He then considers that the size of the group isn't something that can be ignored. Reaching a conclusion, he decides he should win them over instead of threatening them. With a smile on his face, he finally seems to have found a solution to the problem. After some time passed out, the girl finally begins to regain consciousness. Waking up tied, she screams, asking what that bastard is up to now. But suddenly, she stops screaming and just looks with a confused expression. In front of her, a table with several plates of food has just appeared. Looking at the table, she asks what exactly those things served are. Seeing she finally woke up, he approaches to start the conversation between them. She then warns she won't open her mouth until he finally marries her. Grabbing a plate, he says he'll think about it while eating some snacks. With chopsticks, he picks up one of the dumplings and slowly brings it to his mouth. Taking a bite, he tastes the rice cake with an expression of satisfaction. He then offers her a piece, saying the food is very good. With the dumpling in her mouth, she gets an expression of someone who really liked the food. Watching him eat, she asks for some too, saying she wants to try the food. Screaming loudly, she opens her mouth and insists she also wants to eat some. Putting the food in her mouth, he finally gives in to the request she made. After eating, she says the rice cake was really delicious. With sparkling eyes, she pleads for him to give her one more. With a smile on his face, he prepares for his next and unexpected action. Flipping the plate, he eats all the dumplings at once, leaving her shocked. Screaming in anger, she says she won't marry unless he gives her 3 children. Saying that was good, he warns that now there are only 2 left. Desperate, she says 1 son and 1 daughter would be enough for her. Eating one more, he asks what she said and warns that now only 1 remains. Crying, she begs, saying she'll then accept having just 1 daughter with him. Opening his mouth, he prepares to eat the last dumpling remaining on the tray. Seeing the scene, she lets out a scream of complete despair at the situation. Flying in his direction, she begs for him to please marry her. He then stares at her with a smile on his face, seeing the result of his provocation. Agreeing, he says he'll marry her when he wants to, because he can't now. He then proposes to marry in 100 years and hands her a tray. Offering the food, he says he'll teach her how to make and cultivate the ingredients. Asking if it's a wedding gift, she calls him husband for the first time. Confirming, he thinks, what's the advantage in marrying a 120-year-old man. Using his ability, he summons a large treasure chest in front of him. She then says the chest is beautiful and that it was a gift from her mother. Searching inside the chest, she asks him to wait just a moment. Extending her fist toward him, she says she finally found the item. Offering the gift, she calls him husband and leaves him very surprised. She then reveals that her wedding gift is 2 small white objects. Not understanding what that is, he asks what the gift is about. Confused, he questions if it's a seed like the one from the old man's story. Offering the gift, she tells her husband to take his wedding present. After the conversation, the 2 continue sitting at the table eating quietly. Holding the object in his hand, he begins to question what it really is. He then asks if it's a seed, and she confirms it's a valuable item. At this, Guanak remembers the story of an old gentleman's seed. Surprised, he hears that the man in the story was actually an artist. The explanation continues, saying that goblins try to steal people's abilities. It's then revealed that goblins are extremely greedy beings by nature. Because of this, a technique was created to exchange talents with other people. To end the suffering, humans gave their talents to the goblins in exchange. Guanak finishes the explanation, saying that's why the seed is precious. Insisting heavily, Guanak says he must accept the incredible gift right away. Thinking about the proposal, he considers taking the seeds if they're that good. She then says he can call her bride, moving closer to him. Asking where they came from, she says her grandmother got them from the Korean peninsula. Guanak explains that this happened during the reign of King Go-Yon-Woo. She then continues, saying the seed's owner was a doctor going to the Western District. Known for his medicine, he died in prison while treating an incurable disease. With an epiphany, he realizes this means he can make the remedies. Remembering his failures, he says he was worried about not being able to make the remedies. She then reveals that the other seed belonged to a very powerful man. Being very good with weapons, he was also known for his skill in riding, but because of his arrogance, he ended up bringing death upon himself. He gave the seed to her grandmother, who saved his beloved from battle. Reflecting on the story, he understands that the second man was a type of warrior. Even if their personalities don't match, he decides it would be bad not to accept the seeds. At this, she asks if they should then place the seeds directly in him. With a smile, he agrees with the idea, but seems to have a plan in mind. Suddenly, she draws a weapon and questions him about his true intentions. A malicious smile appears on her face as she stares at him threateningly. A strong blow is struck suddenly, causing a great impact on the spot. Feeling the blow, he puts his hand on his head, complaining about the pain he felt. Sitting on the floor, he realizes confused that the blow actually didn't hurt at all. She then explains she was just placing the seed in him, not really attacking. He says he doesn't feel a difference, but she warns he'll find out when he needs to. As they leave to eat, he asks them to wait a moment. Looking at the chest, he seems to be thinking about what to do next. Inside the chest, the 7-branched sword is finally revealed to him. He then comments that artifacts like this have egos, and this sword's is quite high. Gwanak warns him not to underestimate the fact that his attribute is wood. It's explained that the sword is incompatible with the gold element because of the 5 elements. Worried, Gwanak asks him not to push himself too hard when trying to grab the sword. Even with the warnings, he decides he should at least try anyway. At this, the sword inside the chest begins to react with intense energy. With his hand trembling, he prepares to finally try to hold the sword. Holding the sword, he finally manages to wield the powerful legendary weapon with his hands. As he wields it, a powerful energy begins to emanate throughout his body. With great difficulty, he tries to control the immense power of the newly acquired sword. Gwanak then shouts, saying she warned him not to push himself too hard with this. Worried about the situation, Gwanak calls out to him with a tone of fear. Gritting his teeth, he continues to endure the sword's energy with a smile. The sword then calls him a bastard, surprised by his enormous resistance. The sword's power continues to emanate, showing it hasn't been fully dominated yet. The sword questions whether he's really that desperate to obtain its power. Details of the blade show the complexity and power contained in the ancient artifact. Surprised by the change, Gwanak wonders what the hell is happening there. He then manages to control the energy, leaving the sword completely surprised by his power. Now, with the sword under his control, he holds it firmly in his hand. Raising the sword, he says this should be enough to discipline it. Gwanak praises him, saying she didn't expect him to subdue the sword. Thinking about what happened, he feels the desire and confidence to master the sword. He then wonders, looking at his hand, if this is a warrior's talent. Now standing, he prepares for the next step after mastering the sword. With a smile on his face, he finally asks if they can go back home. Changing scenery, the scene now takes place on a busy city street. Little Gwanak takes the moment to drink something from a very large bottle. She then says with great joy that the drink is sweet and very delicious. It's been a while since they finally returned to their world in Korea. At this moment, they're in the computer area of Asura to rest. Explaining the situation, he reveals they had to go to a nearby city. Despite Sodom wanting to go along, she couldn't because of her responsibilities. 7 months have passed since the fight in Dokdo, and the news continues to reverberate. In the news, people are still talking about what happened that day. Many believe the fault lies with the interruption by the Dragon King of the East Sea. Analyzing the information, he continues researching the latest events on the internet. A news report shows that the Dragon King is silent and being criticized. Even after apologizing, the leaders didn't accept what he said about what happened. Questioning about the other seas, he discovers there's no news about them. Gwanak then comments that it seems they're simply ignoring the East Sea. He explains that despite not getting along, they unite against enemies. Realizing the gravity, he now focuses on what seems to be the biggest problem. News shows that the 7-branch sword is missing and being searched for. He then imagines this is happening because of the vow Beowulf made. Being an immortal, he managed to calm the remnants of the sword with a single movement. Gwanak says the East Sea is now everyone's enemy. With his computer time exhausted, he gets up from the chair to leave. Standing still, he turns to Gwanak and asks for her opinion. Decided, he warns that they need to go to Mount Gwanak as quickly as possible. He explains that returning to the pavilion would raise suspicion since he's been missing. Therefore, he decides the best thing to do is wait and see how things unfold. He then realizes he can't sense any energy coming from his main body. Gwanak explains the connection was lost since they entered the goblin's place. Shocked, he realizes 7 months have passed without connection. Realizing the gravity, he asks why he wasn't warned about this before. He then declares they need to go to Mount Gwanak immediately. Changing scenes, he appears surprised in a completely different and unexpected location. At the location, he observes several wasps coming out from inside a giant hive. He wonders if those things in the great tree are really beehives. Confused, he questions how the the bees manage to cross the barrier he created. Looking around, he comments, "The situation doesn't seem that bad." Gwanak then explains the reason the bees are there is because of the ground. He asks if the ground is soft, but Gwanak seems quite frightened. Suddenly, Gwanak is sucked into the ground, disappearing completely in an instant. Startled, he screams without understanding what just happened to his companion. He wonders what happened and why the Sunbay's main body is there. The bees begin to move, preparing to attack the invader of their territory. The two look up, seeing the swarm of bees approaching them rapidly. Suddenly, the bees grow in size, making the situation even more dangerous. One of the giant bees advances quickly to strike a blow against him. Using his pipe, he manages to defend himself from the creature's attack successfully. With his ability, he summons several masked spirits to the battlefield. Advancing in the air, he prepares for combat against the swarm of bees. A great battle then begins between the summons and the swarm of bees. The battle continues intense, with the spirits exchanging several blows against the bees. Then an even larger swarm of bees advances toward the battlefield. Seeing the situation, he complains there seems to be no end to all of them. He then thinks he needs something to get rid of them all at once. Amid the chaos, the battlefield is suddenly engulfed by intense flames. From the depths of the ground, Gwanak emerges for combat. Roaring with full force, Gwanak releases a powerful wave of fire against the swarm. The flames advance quickly, beginning to burn all the bees in their path. Seeing Gwanak fight, he shouts the Sunbai's name and thinks about their weaknesses. He then worries about damaging the tree if he makes the slightest mistake in the fight. Observing the nests, it's possible to see they're all completely full of bees. The giant tree is totally covered by hives and by swarms of bees. Worried about the tree, he asks if there's any other way to fight. Thinking of a solution, he searches for a way to deal with them safely. Mysteriously, two bees that were flying nearby stop completely in the air. Not understanding, he questions how they died, since he didn't even touch them. With a sudden idea, he seems to have finally found the answer he was looking for. Surrounding the great tree, the flames now threaten the entire area completely. Seeing the scene, the large creature prepares to defend the tree from the bees. Shouting for him to get out, the man runs toward Gwanak. With his ability, he begins removing the fruits from the burning tree. After being removed, the small fruits fall to the ground amid the fire. Irritated by the action, the bees start flying more aggressively. With the fruits already saved, the swarm of bees begins to move away from the tree. Creating a barrier, he manages to trap some of the bees that were nearby. Sitting on the ground, he struggles to keep the bees trapped in the barrier. He then comments that he barely managed to keep all the bees inside the barrier. At that, Gwanak says they know absolutely nothing about those bees. Then she begins to tell an ancient story about the Queen Mother of the West. He finds it ridiculous, saying she disappeared and wouldn't be there at all. Pointing to the tree, he asks about the peaches of immortality that are there. He then supposes the bees might be from a remote place or another dimension. Saying they found a way, he warns that the barrier's smoke has finally cleared. With a confident smile, he then asks if they should go in to investigate. After approaching the tree, he begins opening one of the large hives. Holding the honeycomb in his hands, he's surprised by what he finds inside. Seeing the energy in the honeycomb, he says this isn't an ordinary hive. Gwanak gets excited, so he decides to offer a piece to his Sunbai. Smelling the strong scent, he asks if this is really the honey from the tree. Remembering the book, he thinks about how he can use the honey as medicine. Searching carefully, he finally manages to find the brood comb of the hive. Realizing the larvae are alive, he decides he needs to move them somewhere else. Taking some of the jelly, he decides to eat it to find out what the effects will be. Upon consuming the item, a great golden energy begins emanating from his body. Making a face, he complains, saying the jelly is actually very bitter. He then says he thought it would be sweet, since his Sunbai was eating it before. Suddenly, his body begins to glow, leaving Gwanak quite startled. Not understanding the situation, Gwanak asks why his head is glowing. He then realizes something has changed, but doesn't know what it is. Suddenly, Gwanak is shocked to see that dragon horns have sprouted on him. Startled, she asks why he now has those horns on his head. Gwanak shouts, saying it's ridiculous, and that he wouldn't turn into a bear. He then shows that something strange is also happening at his waist. Touching his body, Gwanak questions if he really is who he says he is. He tries to explain that maybe it's because of the magic pearl he consumed. Gwanak then begins explaining that dragons are beings born from water. Spending a long time training, they're also creatures that can transform. Moreover, they don't possess just one attribute, but several at the same time. Gwanak seems a bit nervous, saying he shouldn't be talking about this now. She then stares at him, saying he's definitely an irregular being. He laments, thinking that if he'd known, he would have kept his abilities secret. Gwanak consoles him, saying he can blame the royal jelly for the horns. She says if he lives as a dragon, no one will be able to stop him. Thinking about the possibility, he considers the idea of transforming into a dragon. He then realizes that, given how the royal jelly reacts, It's worth consuming. Holding the honeycomb, he decides it'll be worth consuming all the honey. He then plans to take care of the larvae so he can have more honey in the future. Thinking about his plan, he decides he'll need to learn a new technique. Guanak is confused, not understanding what he intends to do now. He then explains that his wood attribute limits him to using certain energies. With his irregular physique, he believes he can absorb the effects without changing. He then reveals he can use some items to learn the new techniques. Surprised, Guanak sees the books and scroll he obtained earlier. He shows the secret books and the scroll from the shinobi he defeated. Since he needs to stay hidden, he decides it's a good idea to try. Holding the scroll, he says that doesn't seem like a bad idea. With a smile, he says he'll learn the arts of a true shinobi. Thinking about his items, he remembers he already possesses 3 gold attribute artifacts. Guanak congratulates him on his plans, but he says something is still bothering him. At that, he regrets not being able to deliver the bamboo shoot to his sunbae. So he says he wants to deliver the item anyway and looks for a way. Questioning his concern, Guanak asks why that's such a big problem for him. Completely confused by the question, he just stares at him without understanding the situation.